I feel like this is a fun one because we do get to start in the proto here is kind of is pretty easy to the proto is a pretty easy thing to pick out, which is what we could potentially start talking about with you here, our man on the ground for this. Because
how proto are we getting? What are the ground rules here?
Well, like, I think the proto for it is just the death metal. So
the entire genre.
So right, this is something you can kind of weigh in on seeing because, obviously death metal like never really went away. It's always been a really strong genre, but certainly in the late '90s and then the 2000s there, the death metal coming out was different than the death metal that started, right?
Totally. Obviously the original wave, call it what you will, Florida, Sweden, and all places in between had its certain sound. Obviously some differences there. We've talked about it many times, key producers creating those sounds, certain technologies or lack thereof creating those sounds, whether it was Morbid Angel, Obituary, Death, the list goes on, Deicide, then Entombed, of course, Dismember, we had Autopsy, we had bucket loads we had bands coming out of Brazil, it was exciting. We had Gorguts out of Montreal, which was one of probably, my Canadian fave at that time. But yeah, I guess fast forward, kind of funny, a lot of Death put records right up, obviously, until the mid-'90s. So whether there was really a gap, I don't know. Maybe we just create these periods because it helps us make sense of history. But I guess when we moved into the late '90s, early 2000s, a lot of things changed because, well, firstly because of the whole melodic death metal thing, which was completely different than what had happened before, perhaps with the slight exception of, like we talked about before, like a lot of Death's later stuff was getting pretty melodic, but melodic in a progressive and really complex and technical kind of way, not in this sort of like, Iron Maiden-y kind of way. So death metal meant one thing. For 10 years, a good 10 years. At least, and now it means so many things. But once we hit the late '90s into the early 2000s, it completely changed. I think, in a word, it became more accessible. Bands found ways to take the essence of that brutality, brutality and being tuned down, and in the OG years, actually playing a lot slower. Were the hallmarks of death metal. Thrash was fast. Black metal was largely fast. Death metal sort of put its, flag in the sand on being slow and just so brutal. And the down tuning thing, that was a death metal thing. Slayer was E flat on Rain and Blood. There's predecessors there, but death metal was the first time it really slowed down. But that totally changed. Into the late '90s, early 2000s, when it kind of got, ratcheted up. It got debrutalized a little bit, and then, I'm jumping way ahead here, but the whole reason why we're probably talking about the new wave of old school death metal is precisely because in the late '90s, mid to late '90s, into the early 2000s, death metal became more accessible. It hybridized with other styles of metal. The listenership expanded pretty massively. So that's my rant. But here we are.
In the chat, we have Deadman pointing out. So is this stream happening on the 35th anniversary of Scream Bloody Gore intentional, or was that just a really funny coincidence?
It's a fucking beautiful coincidence.
It's a beautiful coincidence, but now that you've pointed it out, it was absolutely intentional. We are top-notch professionals here at Banger that are aware of all dates, times.
We
know all. Big Dog Zone feels like brutal death metal was really going hard for a bit before there was a resurgence of bands that either seemed to worship Incantation, Morbid Angel, or Autopsy, talking again about the slower death metal. And then we also have some fun stuff, some follows. Thanks to Thrash Till Death, Satanic Warmaster, all caps for the follows. John Grove for the resub, 2 months. death metal is good as long as it's dirty, brutal, and chaotic, which is definitely the kind of stuff we are going to get into. Could Bloodbath be a proto new wave of old school death metal? I think Bloodbath is a little more, because they have that distinct Swedish sound that kind of. The Swedish sound, especially once you get to something like Bloodbath, did have like a layer of accessibility. There's something so pleasing about that guitar tone they have, where it kind of creates this like, oh damn, that's some listenable stuff. Whereas the kind of thing that I find really surprising about the old school death metal revival is that like the bands that are the biggest, like cough, like that you're seeing written about in like your, getting good scores in your pitchforks, which is like when a band gets a good review in Pitchfork is kind of when I feel like it's the evidence that it's it's done, shut it down. No, when a band gets a good review in Pitchfork,
start over.
You kind of know like, okay, this is something. And certain times the bands that are getting that kind of coverage are something like a Death Heaven, where you go, okay, well they took black metal and found a way to make it more accessible, but include a black metal tone, and it makes sense.
Bloodbath isn't. Sorry to interrupt there, but Bloodbath is kind of an interesting case actually, because they, in so many ways, I mean, they're related to that whole Swedish sound, but they're not totally old school. They're an interesting bridge. There's something to be said there.
Yeah.
I mean, those first 3-4 Bloodbath records are fucking amazing in my, like, the sound of those records, because I kind of feel that, I mean, they're quote unquote older dudes with all the rest of us older dudes, and so, but they were almost like the first ones in a way to go, okay, it's HM2, we're super down-tuned, and it's guttural all the way through. Remember when we used to do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they were a throwback, but not a throwback. I'm not making any sense, but maybe the point in all of it is they're pretty singular in their place. They're out there like an island of like not really being anywhere specific, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, someone asked in the question, are we differentiating between Florida and Sweden? I don't think we're necessarily differentiating, but there is an interesting thing to be said in the kind of like development of the genre of death metal is the Swedish sound is kind of what would eventually become melodic death metal in a big way.
Yep.
So the kind of differentiation comes not really because it's that we're going, oh no, that's a Swedish thing, it doesn't sound like that, it doesn't count or whatever. It's just because the you kind of had the two branches where you got the melodic death metal, which really took over the 2000s there, and then as the 2000s started to taper out, now that when I was preparing the list for this, I was looking and I kind of thought it had been going on longer than it had, but it's like you get a little trickle, and then 2016 hits, and you start getting all the albums that are having the crossover success. Someone mentioned Gatecreeper too. These bands that are popping off and getting kind of recognition outside of metal, or at the very least outside of the death metal strip, are all not really sounding Swedish anymore. They're sounding like, and the tier list, I've got what I think are the 3 proto albums.
But there's I think the key, that's an interesting question, right, is the Swedish and Florida sound, that there are, or were, 2 sounds, right? And now we can't disentangle them because bands have taken a little bit of everything and thrown it all together. But it's interesting that it was 2 pretty distinctive sounds at that time. But then later, of course, you get bands that are using that classic Sunlight sound, but they're more like a Morbid Angel influenced band. Yeah. So we can't. It's messy. It's way too messy now.
Yeah. So I mean,
I
think the three albums that I would say kind of really I hear the most when I'm listening to this stuff is I put up Autopsy. I put up, you can see there's something I'm sure you're excited about up there. See a little Autopsy peeking through.
Yes.
You got Bolt Thrower, and you've got Incantation. The kind of three death metal bands, and a little bit of variety in location there. You're getting kind of not just one locale, but there are 3 bands that I really associate with bands that, my favorite genre being death doom, the bands that I kind of think about as the proto for the type of death doom I like, which is these are 3 death metal bands that, yeah, they have their fast, their brutality, but they are not afraid to slow down.
Yeah. Well, of those 3, I can definitely speak the most to Autopsy. And if you had told me back in 89, when did fucking Severed Survival come out? Fuck, I don't know. Somewhere around there. In 2022, that we would be talking about an early Autopsy record still kind of being a defining record and influencing a lot of bands, I would have fucking laughed to death. Because we love, I mean, but full respect to Autopsy, that sound on those early records was like, what the fuck are these guys doing? Because the level of like the speed, the slowness was one thing. Like, you have to understand, like, no one dared to play that slow. Like, everyone talked in metal about fucking how fast can you play. Like, you know, fucking all the drummers were trying to nail the double bass, and there wasn't even production yet that could capture fucking Sandoval playing double bass and actually being able to hear what he could fucking play. And Autopsy was like this sloppy, it was so slow that you could actually hear that the notes weren't hitting at the right time. Like, the guitar was like, you know what I mean? It was like, kaball! And it was like, the bass was so, they were down tuned so low, everything was fucking flopping around. But we fucking loved it. It was fucking so brutal in how elemental it was. Yeah. It was so stripped down. So, you know, we loved it, but if you had said Morbid Angel was going to be an influential band 30 years from now, we would have been, probably. You said Autopsy, we would have been like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Anyway, but Reefert and fucking DiGiorgio and the rest of the guys in the band, they obviously created a sound which took a long time. This is key. Like, it kind of took a long time for people to pick up on the intentional or unintentional genius of the early Autopsy records, but there you go. Eventually, everyone came around.
Yeah, I like Fourth Crusade. Shane Brown, of course. Fourth Crusade is my favorite album, and I feel like Fourth Crusade is also relevant here because, you know, when you are talking about the earlier Bolt Thrower albums, you do have a bit more of the grindy influence in there, which, I mean, kind of comes through in some of the modern stuff, but really I feel like, you know, Fourth Crusade Bolt Thrower is what we're talking about when we're having these modern conversations. Professor Vitriol, great point. Missing one of the 2 classics. Asphyx albums in Proto Tier is criminal considering how much modern death metal, especially in their scene, is doomy as fuck. Asphyx are one of those great bands where I love Asphyx. I mean, it just has had such a longevity and quality. And the thing I'm always curious about, though, is like, they're kind of one of those bands that's like, it's again one of those like cool check bands where it's like someone's gonna know the Incantation record, the Autopsy record, and the Bolt Thrower record. You know what I mean? Like, but saying like, hey, well, how do you feel about Asphyx is like a good. They feel like kind of the banner waver for the underground, I guess.
Yeah, you know, I'm the first to admit that because I was and am such a dyed-in-the-wool Pestilence guy. Like, the first 3 Pestilence records for me were so huge that it's almost like I worshipped at the altar of Van Drunen, like, so heavily, especially on Consuming Impulse and Malleus Maleficarum, that it's like I didn't pay that much attention to Asphyx until much more recently, you know? And yet, weirdly, like, Asphyx is a much more longer-running band in terms of Van Drunen's participation, even though Pestilence kind of continue on in various iterations. And it's funny, like, in the end, I never thought I'd say this, but it's almost like Asphyx has had more longevity and arguably, like, more staying power, probably even a little more influence than even Pestilence did. I don't know, but that's my take.
For me, the thing about Asphyx is I feel like, it's funny that you say that because I've always felt that they're a band that, like, and kind of, I guess fortunate for the band is, it's almost like they peaked they peaked. It was like, that kid that you're in high school with that's tiny all through high school, and then you're like halfway through college and you meet up with him and he's like 6'4" and like 200 pounds. You're like, dude, what the hell happened?
Totally.
Yeah, I peaked late, because this fix really, it does seem like, when you're talking about old school and you listen to people talking about old school death metal, you don't have them come up as much. But then when we're talking about like a new wave, everybody's like, what about his fix? We love his fix around here.
Yeah, it's almost like, for me, I was like, no, Martin Van Buren can't play in another band. He can't have another successful metal band. It was like, I was just that's not fair. That's not right. But anyway, probably not as appreciated and sort of recognized for their contribution and staying power as much as they should be.
Master Killer, I'm guessing Andrew's not joining today. You are guessing wrong. Andrew will be coming in at 5:30. Scheduling different coasts, all that stuff. He'll be joining us at 5:30, and he'll be guiding. Sam will have to leave at 6, so we'll transition to Andrew, and then Andrew will carry us in his very capable shredding fingers into the end of our stream. So you'll get a little bit of Sam, a little bit of Andrew. Keeping it spicy and interesting.
Yeah.
Mion, am I the only one that finds it a bit weird to first actually pick certain albums for the proto? Aren't the new wave bands playing tribute and being influenced by 90s death metal as a whole? Yes, but there are certain peaks that you can think of where there's certain albums that you think, I really don't think, Morbid Angel is, and Morbid Angel and Immolation. Immolation more so than Morbid Angel, I'd say, are these two big death metal bands. But with Morbid Angel, you feel like they kind of really, their influence is a little more spread out. It's not as much covering this side, and they're a little more centered, I think, in their influence. Whereas something like Autopsy, the bands that are influenced by Autopsy, there are going to be bands not influenced by Morbid Angel and influenced by Autopsy.
I think part of that,
in this vein.
I think part of that with Morbid Angel too is like, especially in the OG time, those first records, they were super technical, right? They had like this Altars of Madness, one of my all-time favorite death metal records, one of the best album covers in the history of the genre, in my opinion. And they just had this technical edge that, to your point, I think part of that spreading out was they inspired like all of the tech death bands as well, because of Trey's kind of warpy, angular riffs that you could never tell really where they were beginning or they were ending, kind of really bizarre for the time arrangements, and Sound of Owl's drumming was just so off the charts that I think you're right. Like they don't have their stamp on what I would consider a little bit more quote unquote pure old school death metal, which arguably has a elegant simplicity to it, rather than a sort of like, look what I can do to it. So I think there's something you said there.
Which, Professor Vitriol, you're right though. Hidden Histories is basically, what if we did Formulas Fatal but made it boring? But that's kind of the idea, right? That's kind of Autopsy, right? And that's, for me, that's my favorite music. This is like, we're talking about, like I said, Death Doom, getting over more to Death Doom, but these are a lot of the proto Death Doom bands as well.
It's something about like having the balls to like say 4 words over the course of like 20 seconds, right? Like in a weird inverted, to my earlier point, kind of way. It was like that took more balls in some ways than just like, look at the blast beat I can do, look at how complex my guitar solo was. It was like, we're just going to let the note hang. And it's just like, oh, okay. We're going to find heaviness in that rather than just this barrage. And at the time, that was super unusual, when everyone was just like on this sprint to become the fastest thing on the planet.
Okay, so we'll need to put some headphones on. Andrew is in the chat, so we can get going on. Right. We can get our boy in here. Very excited. First time as always, I'm just cheating. I'm just using this as an excuse to hang out with people that I want to hang out with. And there we go. There he is. We'll put on some headphones. There you are, sir.
Thank you.
There I am, sir. Andrew, how you doing? Can you hear us? No? Yes? Uh-oh.
I don't think we got him.
Does he know?
Andrew, can you hear me?
Hmm.
No.
Interesting.
We got nothing.
We got nothing. Why would he not be able to hear us? Hello?
Oh, yeah.
I can hear you. We can hear you. Uh-oh. We can hear you. Can you not hear us? This is normally what we... why would that be? Why would that be?
Let me try and join again.
Yeah. That's off. Is this supposed to be? Oh, yeah. Mute the speaker. Oh, I know what's going on. I know what's going on for him. My bad. Whoops. My bad. Yep. Normally we do this before the stream. This is my first time doing it on the fly.
Here we go.
We're gonna.
We'll do it live.
Yep. Settings. Oh no. There we go. Enable director, video source, Streamline's virtual webcam. There you can see us. Audio source, the microphones. Can you hear us? Can you see us? Yes? No? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. I think you can hear us. And then the last thing I need to do is look at this. Is the beauty of Twitch. This is where else. If this was a pre-recorded video, you wouldn't get to see all this beautiful faffing about. You wouldn't get to peek into the kitchen. It's like that's the new thing. I don't know if you guys have been to any expansive restaurants lately. The kitchen's in the middle of the restaurant. You get to see everybody cooking. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yo.
And we can hear you. Nice, great, beautiful,
got this.
beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us.
Glad I could help. I'm
Joining
here.
us.
I'm
Yeah,
here for
Sam
you.
crushing
Yeah,
it over
I
here.
just
We
nailed that shit.
have the great, the talented, the skilled, the hilarious Andrew Lee of Rip to Shreds, as well as what is growing into a Raga Johansson level of projects.
Hey-o.
I don't think I'm quite at Raga's level yet.
Yeah, no one will ever be at Raga's level, but you got a lot going on. I'm starting to see you as a hired gun popping in and out. And hey, thanks. We got some action going on. Shane Brown with a tier 1 sub and Pain X Piss coming in. Thanks so much. So Andrew, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you guys?
We're great.
We're good.
great.
We're hanging out. Nice to meet you, Andrew. Thanks for doing this with us.
This is Mr. Sam Dunn of Banger, coming at you. He'll be guiding us through for the next. He'll be hanging out with us. He'll have to leave midstream, and then you'll kind of.
I'm just here to talk about the old shit. That's all.
Yeah. He's our man in the street when we're talking about kind of our original wave of bands.
And speaking of old shit, I got to jump right to the Nihilist flag behind the kit there. Is that what I'm looking at?
Yes. That's a Nihilist flag.
Yeah, nice. Respect. Bringing it right back. Is that like that's like the guiding light for all things ripped to shreds? It's like you pay homage. Like before every jam, you're just like
a little touch.
Yeah, little, bow down.
That's the anime posters I've got in here that are off camera.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, let's get you.
I'd like to say that's the answer I was looking for, but it wasn't really. But respect.
I love that this is a thing that's happened so much when when we're interviewing people, when we're bringing people in, and it's like, what is your main influences? And they're like, yes. And you're like, yes, as in the band, yes, and they're like, yeah. Yes, and anime. Yep.
And we're like, okay, where do we pivot? How do we pivot?
We're cranking Andrew. We're cranking the Andrew in the monitors. Again, just doing it live, figuring it out. Yeah, some people are asking where the body pillow is. I was gonna bring the body pillow in for the stream, but I had to take the bus into work today. Because just so everybody knows, in case anybody was ever curious, the Banger parking spot situation is there's construction happening on our street. Parking is impossible, and I wasn't, and I'm not quite. It's pretty hard to embarrass me, but taking the public transit with a body pillow view is my threshold for level of embarrassment.
It's totally normal for like metal guys to carry around pillows of each other, right?
Yeah, totally, definitely. I mean, we're big.
It might be now.
We're big merch fans at Banger, and always the out of the box merch. I'm really glad you had a spare one of those for me, because boy, that is an endless supply of comedy for videos. And then it's just my couch pillow now, because I didn't know where to put it. It's like, so it just sits on the couch, and the cats love it, so that you just constantly have a cat on your face.
So Andrew, what's going on? Update us on your world, music or otherwise. What's the latest?
We got a couple of Rip to Shreds shows coming up. We got Northwest Terror Fest. I think we're shooting a music video in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
And there will be something before the end of the year. I can't really say what it is, but I think we all know.
A certain thing.
This has been a very cryptic stream. We've given some cryptic Banger updates. You're giving some cryptic updates. Andrew Lee updates. Love it. The music video. Any what's the idea? Any kind of thing you can say about that?
I mean, what can I say? It's a metal music video.
Yeah. All right.
So it's in a warehouse.
It's in a warehouse.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people holding instruments.
Yeah, no, I end up having to watch, because of what I do on Twitch, I end up watching basically every metal music video in a month. And it's either, there's one of like 3 things we can bet on. Warehouse definitely being one of them, and a woman just unnecessarily being chased through the woods is another, common theme. You're like, uh-oh, this lady's in the woods. I don't think this is going to end well for her. Run! Start running down! No! Run now!
So make sure you got that in the video, is
Yeah.
what Blaine is saying.
Yeah.
Make sure you got the woods segment worked out.
There's always the classic guy in a room with like one light and his hands on his face.
A man going through some shit. What's your music video? A man is dealing with the toll of his life. Damn. Hefty stuff.
Can't decide whether he'd rather go see Incantation or Mortician that night.
Truly an impossible choice. That's when you just have to cut yourself in half.
Chopped in half. Sorry. That was
very, very metal. So we've been talking about the kind of the proto albums, for the bands we're talking about, kind of the current wave of old school death metal. The 3 I pulled for kind of the ones that I think are really kind of influence a lot of people, but you can drop in which ones are influencing you. We've got Autopsy, Bolt Thrower, and Incantation being the kind of like 3, kind of ones that I hear the most sonically kind of throughout all of these, where some will sound more like one, some will sound more like other, some will bring in some outside influences, but at the core I really find there's always some Autopsy, Bolt Thrower, and Incantation in there.
Well, you're missing the obvious Entombed.
Yes.
Can't not have Entombed.
Entombed, yeah.
Which album? Which album, Andrew?
Has to be Left Hand Path.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
can't be anything but Left Hand Path.
That is.
I feel this whole episode is just going to be a giant list of proto bands.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to get to the modern stuff because
this was actually the episode on proto new wave of old school death metal. Yeah, that's a great record. We all share the love for sure. What an album.
Ooh, we do have Professor Vitriol with a good point in the chat. Fuck a music video, make an AMV over Dragon Ball Z with Hypercam 2 trial. That would be fantastic. just ripped to shreds with Sasuke fighting Naruto in the background. So I mean, Entombed is obviously a big one. One we've been talking about is there's some people that have said Morbid Angel should be up there, which obviously you can't deny Morbid Angel's impact on death metal as a whole in every way, shape, and form. But for me, the reason I didn't include Morbid Angel in the list is just that it feels more like Morbid Angel is just Morbid Angel. They're a staple death metal band, and they influence all death metal, but they're not as much in the corner we're operating in, because they're not really a band that ever really loved playing slow the way a lot of the bands we're talking about are. What's your thoughts on Morbid Angel inclusion?
I think if you're talking about, bands like Blood Incantation especially,
Yeah.
maybe
Yes.
Tomb Mold, you have to look at the F and the G albums for Morbid Angel, because they're just like pulling from those two constantly.
Yeah, certainly Blood Incantation, absolutely. You got that right. Really wearing it on the sleeve there at moments. I was like, whoa, okay. Was this left over?
But if you're talking about like the first like 2 or 3 Morbid Angel albums, then I think it becomes a lot tougher to think of like more popular bands that are trying to clone that. You don't really hear much.
Yeah, but this, I mean, for me, it's, you can certainly hear bands that have Morbid Angel, but then if we're looking at something, when we're getting a little more towards the doomy side that this list will get to, you're kind of losing that Morbid Angel. But all of them have the Entombed, all of them have the Autopsy, all of them have the Bull Thrower.
Well, and a few people in the chat here are bringing up Obituary, which I think is pretty valid point in terms of, like, we talk about the speed thing. That was another hallmark of those early Obituary albums. It was actually just how fucking slow they were. Slowly We Rot, like like Autopsy, just the brutality of slowing things down was definitely something that Obituary really brought to the fore. So in terms of that, again, over towards that more doomy side of the old school wave of new school wave of old death metal, whatever we're talking about, Obituary needs to be part of the conversation too. Do you have a go-to Obituary album, Andrew?
Cause of Death for me.
Yeah.
I think like the guitar tone on the first album is like a little bit fuzzy, and I like the production of the second one better, and it's got chopped in half, so.
Yeah, and James Murphy too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of elevated the whole thing. It was like, I remember when it came out. It was like, whoa, Slowly We Rot was like, okay, this is like a demo on vinyl-ish, and then Cause of Death came out, it was like, whoa, this is like pro. This is the real deal. Yeah. It was definitely a shift with that album.
And I mean, as a peculiar influence, I certainly have some merch, Cerebral Rot merch, where you really feel the Obituary influence in the merch as well. Some of this new wave of bands, we're getting a lot of Real Tree camo with some neon orange logo off, which really screams Obituary to me. Really kind of bringing an Obituary vibe. I mean, it's hard to think of a death metal show where you're going to see more camo than an Obituary show.
And a lot of mesh back hats.
Mesh
A lot of mesh back hats.
Mesh back got some camo going on.
I mean, you got the Maggot Stomp shows.
Oh,
those are gonna have a lot of camo.
A lot of camo.
And speaking of Maggot Stomp, I think you have to have Mortician's Hacked Up for Barbecue on here too.
All right.
Give us the
rundown.
I mean, I think like if you look at a lot of the new Maggot Stomp bands, a lot of that kind of slow shit. I mean, there are fast Maggot Stomp bands too.
Yeah.
And I think they're pulling equally from like Suffocation and Mortician, but if like specifically those kinds of slow, sort of slam, sort of not really slam kind of riffs, I think are coming straight out of all the slow Mortician shit.
Again, Mortician, one of those bands that's like we were talking about Asphyx earlier, as like kind of almost like a knowledge check. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you like these bands? What about Asphyx? What
Yeah.
about Mortician? It
Yeah.
being like the kind of like immediate band that you can just know, like, I'm gonna rock a Mortician shirt when I go to this, so everybody knows I know my shit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I feel like Mortician didn't really get their due until the last like 10 years.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
if you
same
were
with Asphyx,
online and you talked about Mortician at all, everyone immediately just wrote them off as like literally the worst death metal band they'd ever heard in their lives.
And when did that change, do you think?
I mean, people still think that. So I feel like it's only
It
really
never
changed
changed.
in the last,
Yeah.
only in like the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. I feel like the core of, I mean, there's a lot of crossover with Asphyx and Mortician. I feel like the core of their fan base is probably all under the age of 40. Like, it's almost exclusively people that like weren't there and are just like, man, I wish I was there. These bands are great, and you know now they get to do all the kind of like the festivals where you are getting kind of the. You know, this is why you're seeing bands a lot like that. Or I mean, Mortician is like a real festival staple in the States. Just like anytime you go to something like a Maryland Death Fest, you're getting a lot of bands like that where it's like it is a younger audience going to the thing, and that's kind of what they want. And it's definitely doesn't feel like it's as much something that would be at an older dude festival.
No, it's a valid point because I remember listening to Mortician in the early days, but like, I don't know, I think you're right, Andrew. Maybe they never really got their due. I got to go back and listen to some of those records, but it was like, maybe it's because at the time, for the generation of metal fans like myself who were there sort of when all that shit came out, it was like, holy fuck, like we got a lot of good death metal here.
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of like, we're full up, like with Death and Morbid Angel and Obituary and then the Swedish bands all kind of coming out within the first 5 years, with the exception of Gorguts, because they were Canadian, and I happen to think that the first 2 Gorguts records are fucking awesome. Yeah, Mortician falls into that group of bands that kind of, took time to get their due. I think you're right there. I got to go back.
Yeah, we've got
Gotta
some
go
in the
back.
chat. Ace, Gendel, Freely, Carcass, Symphonies of Sickness. So this is something we were talking about earlier. The kind of a band like Carcass is really more influencing the melodic death metal movement, whereas we're looking at bands that are more in the sewer. We need a little more slime on our band than I think you'd say a Carcass. Carcass not slimy enough. 7-layer rift dip, and since we're talking about camo hats, I snagged a Sanguicinabog the last time I saw them. You know, there's the old school death metal feel is coming, not in just the music, the whole aesthetic, the vibe of everything is definitely really coming out.
I know the typical thing to say, Carcass, those early records are grindcore, and I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, at least in those early days, like death metal had it has certain structure to it. It was like not messy to the point that Carcass was messy, and even like maybe Repulsion, and there was a handful of bands where it was just like there was that kind of hardcore influence where it was just like noise. There was a noise element, and as heavy and as brutal as those early death metal records were, they were also like, it was well articulated.
Yeah.
It was like put together. It was structured. And I just feel like Carcass was doing something not completely different. It was extreme as well, but they were definitely on a different path at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, we have been talking. Everybody's excited. It's funny. We do a new wave of old school death metal, and then all we want to talk about is old school. It's like we're basically just doing an old school death metal record. I think we have a pretty good. I think we have a pretty good, to steal a name from the chat, 7-layer riff dip. I think we've laid a pretty good base layer in our dip for the kind of where this started, the kind of bands that would be listed among the favorites of the kind of modern movement. But we do need to eventually start talking about some of these modern bands. So
I think there's just one more
Uh-oh.
one more glaring omission there.
Just one more.
glaring.
Yeah.
Jesus, come on. Oh man, I thought we were friends. Jesus, my heart. Oh Jesus.
It's got to be Rippy Kolu.
Oh, we had that. We had a mention in the chat. Who's there with you? Give us your pitch. What album we doing?
Musta Ceremonia. I mean, you look at, any slow band now, especially like Spectral Voice or even
Yeah.
like Mortiferum.
Yeah.
There, you hear them just lift sections verbatim out of Musta Ceremonia. You got slightly stranger bands like Nucleus, or really anyone that does any kind of death doom, like Hooded Menace.
Yep.
There, or Crips, or maybe even Frenolith a little bit. But I would say like Rippy Kolu is like one big part of that, really big part of that.
All right. We're getting into the demo territory. We're getting a little. This is the only bummer with this is, boy, it hurts me. It hurts me from a physical standpoint, knowing I have to put a tape in.
It's portrait view.
Yeah.
We're in portrait view.
Yeah. But I mean, all right. So just to give credit where credit's due, Randy R. Hot tossing that in there. A nice catch. You're in good company with the great Andrew Lee.
But
sharing your
what
vibe.
is the legend? Let's move to the legend.
I guess we have to figure out because this is a hard thing to say, because it's like, is the legend? There's a couple of options for the legend. The legend could be kind of the band that kind of started this movement. The band could be the biggest one, the one kind of most successful these days, because there is certainly one or two bands that are really, having.
Why don't we let our guest lead the charge here, Andrew? If you were to pick the legend of the new wave of old school death metal, do you have a favorite?
I have. Can I give you three?
One at a time, but yes, of course.
Legends,
We're here.
plural.
We're here for an hour and a half more. I'd
All
love
right.
it if you gave me three.
Okay. First one has to be Dead Congregation.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of my friends all rave about the first one, Graves of the Archangels, and like strictly on like chronologically speaking, that's probably more important. But my favorite is the second album, Promulgation.
Yep.
Just because I think it's way tighter. The blast beats sound better because it's got like that kind of ping snare sound. I feel like the first one is a little bit too atmospheric for like my own tastes, but I mean, you could really go with either. My personal preference is just for Promulgation.
Well, this is something I absolutely anticipated. There, I got. Where are we looking? Where are you? I do have both of them, so we can. This is a great opportunity to use. I'm also a big Dead Congregation fan, obviously, based on, I've been talking a lot about Death Doom and my kind of feelings about Death Doom, and this is a band that never crosses over into Death Doom territory, but is very close to stepping over that line. The cool thing about them that I think is really relevant for the modern old school death metal scene is that the one thing that the modern scene has that you didn't have a lot in the early days was that kind of, instead of the type of evil that is being brought by them is a lot more eerie. It's a lot more like implied, I'm scared but I don't know why kind of evil, and I think that's kind of a very unique sound to the new wave of old school death metal, and this is definitely a band I can think off the top that kind of first did that. And then you're also, another band that's probably going to come up at some point is Portal, and this feels like, obviously Portal was putting these albums out at the same time, but this sort of feels like a bridge between something as weird as Portal and something like your Incantations, kind of giving that. Yes. So yes, I agree. But we'll go to the chat since we do have two albums. We have Andrew Lee's pick.
Is it too early to do a poll?
It's never too early to do a poll.
We did a lot of fucking polls.
Polls are
on
great.
The Black Dahlia
Everybody
episode.
loves polls.
We
Hey,
probably
get
did
the
like
chat
fucking
involved.
20 polls.
We can let the chat pick. We can let
It
the
was
chat
out of control.
pick.
It was out of control.
Graves of the Archangel.
Between the two Dead Congregation
Promulgation
records.
of the Fall. Ladies and gentlemen, it's in the chat. Let us know. Let us know what you think. Which dead congregation? Bring on the polls. I mean, obviously, yeah, you do have dates that are relevant. 2008 being a very kind of relevant year, I'd say. I mean, the meat of this is definitely going to be in the 2014s and on. But 2007, 2008 is definitely where you start to kind of have this wave of bands, including Dead Congregation and a couple of others that sort of you feel like, okay, that's death metal, but it does feel like there's a line I can draw, and it does feel different than old school death metal as a genre, and we can start seeing like, is this a new wave? Are there some new ideas?
Sidebar, I like this comment from Vivak. More reverb greater than less reverb. Andrew, I love it.
Yeah.
That's for you, Andrew?
Yeah. I mean, like, you got to put reverb on everything. You got to put it on the snare. You got to put it on the vocals.
Yeah.
Probably put it on the guitar, rhythm
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah. Space it out. Fill the room.
All right. It looks like we've got unfortunately, they couldn't be swayed by an expert. Grave of the Archangels running away with it. Currently 16-8.
Ouch.
Decisions
It's a
made.
bloodbath.
But as we said, Bloodbath not part of this list earlier. It's not a bloodbath. It's
Not a
different than
bloodbath.
bloodbath.
Correction.
Bloodbath sounds different. So I mean, thanks, Blaine. Now we have a cutoff point. Yeah, right. I mean, I feel like for me, the cutoff point, I guess, to the start of this is probably the earliest album I could think of that would potentially be in here would be Portal, Outry, however you want to call it, because there's a weird apostrophe on the end. 2007 being the kind of first time I can think of where you kind of hear a death metal album where you go, that sounds like old school death metal, but it also doesn't.
What about Repugnant?
Repugnant. Oh, fuck.
That's 2006.
You shithead catching me with my damn fan. That is a good point. Well, I said that was the first one I can think of. And now I ask you, sir, what's the first one you can think of? Do you want? Hey, all right. Let's talk a little bit about Repugnant. Then.
But,
we have
it
great-
might it
Yeah,
might
go
be
ahead.
fair to say that Repugnant is a little bit more like Bloodbath,
Yeah.
since I think Repugnant started in like '99, and by 2002 they were already broken up. Like that album didn't come out till way after they were already done as a band.
Yeah, and you feel like potentially it's one of those things where they're kind of part of the first wave, and then also something that wouldn't really have been appreciated in 2006. Certainly, that's something that I feel like took some time to kind of get there.
So what we're saying here is there's a very clear age cutoff.
There's a very clear
There's
age
a very
cutoff.
clear age
Hey,
cutoff.
but you should feel
You're
great.
disqualified. You're disqualified.
But I mean, we've got.
If you're born before 1980? I don't know, what is it?
I guess maybe that's a pretty good cutoff. I mean, yeah, right. 42 seems like you'd be there for the first wave for sure. You're part of the first wave. Once you're getting in your 30s. Hey, the Knight, thanks for the sub. 2 months with your Twitch Prime. As a reminder, just to do the plug, if you've got Amazon Prime, if video for shipping, whatever, and you don't know, you're new to Twitch, you do get Twitch Prime for free. And what Twitch Prime does is you get some free video games, you get some free loot for video games if you like video games. If you don't like video games, what you do get is you get a subscription to any channel of your choice. This does 2 things. For you, it gives you access to the emotes. It prevents you from having to ever see ads when you're here. And for us, it just gives us money. And if you don't give us that money, Jeff Bezos gets to keep it, and he puts it in a pool and he dives into it, Scrooge McDuck style. So if you want to stop him from doing that, click where Sam's head is roughly. There will be a little icon, and you can use your Twitch Prime here. Plug over. So
We got Dead Congregation up there, right?
Dead Congregation
We got
is our first. You have a pitch for a second. You had 3.
Andrew
you had 3
said he
you
had
wanted to talk
3.
about.
Okay,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one after that, probably the first Tribulation album. I think that dropped in like 2009 or so. And like right after it comes out, you can see like this big explosion of chainsaw bands. Right after that, you had like Black Breath. You had a Bastard Priest. maybe like Hail of Bullets. I don't know whether like Hail of Bullets came first or Tribulation, but and then like Entrails got signed to Metal
Oh, yeah.
Blade not long after that.
Entrail's got a
also
record
like
coming out next month.
I
Yeah,
like
and then,
those Black Breath records. Actually, those were good records. Forgot about those.
it's really sad that they broke up.
Yeah,
They were a really sick band.
they were. That was a great sound. Definitely.
Yeah, Tribulation. That's one that's again. It's like weird the things that jump to your mind and the things that I don't. I mean, I literally sit with a Tribulation flag behind me every time I stream at home because I also stream at home. Twitch.tv/Metal Comedy.
Ew.
Exclamation point Metal Comedy in the chat for a link.
You like that?
Yeah, that was great. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh no, did I put it in the wrong spot? Yes. Okay, I put it in the wrong spot. But yeah, okay. Tribulation, interesting pick. Interesting pick. That's a little break in the mold. I love the guests coming on because always I do my homework. I'm preparing the list here. And then there's always like it's always a bunch of left field picks and good reminders.
Andrew the Disruptor.
Andrew the Disruptor. Hey, Wheezy. Thank you, BangerTV. Thank you for using for subscribing 2 months. Damn, we've been here 2 months. We've been doing this 2 months now.
Love the Martin Popoff emoji. Andrew Lee is the Martin Popoff of OSDM.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Mega
he's really
compliment.
bringing some serious knowledge. Tribulation, great point. And I mean, it's funny that then like Tribulation is kind of a band that has like two lives where they kind of do have an influence on this death metal sound, and then almost immediately afterwards they go off and have like this influence on this now gothic metal that is emerging with your bands like your Idle Hands or what are they called now?
Night.
Unto Others.
Yeah, Unto Others.
Night, and
But I think there's also a third one in there because their second album isn't like straight death metal anymore.
yeah.
Formulas of Death, but then like a whole bunch of other bands, like Horrendous' third album or Venom, where you have like Bedsore, they came out on like $20 spin last year or something, and then like Morbid Angel, of course, and then they're all kind of like pulling from that Formulas of Death sound. So I think like Tribulation really had like three big periods that they kind of
Yeah. Fair enough. Valid point, but we are not doing. Hey, Wheezy, thanks for the 2 gifted subs as well to Kevin Heavy N and Roberto Figueroa 666 and Inky coming in with the resub. Nice to see you. Yeah. I mean, Jesus, we're suddenly doing Loghorn's Tribulation episode.
Next week, people.
Next week. I guess that's what the people want. All right. I've talked about it a bunch. I'm curious to hear you about it as well. And I mean, again, this is a band that I feel like had, with like a pretty big gulf. Obviously they were putting out records the whole time, but you have 2 really big Portal records that I feel like. I mean, Portal's one of those bands where they've played a lot of. Again, they're one of those bands that really, despite the fact that they almost intentionally make unlistenable music, they really have managed to translate their unlistenable music to mainstream popularity, which is an interesting thing, I think. And they're, again, one of those bands that I feel like we're both kind of at the start. I mean, you have Otra coming out in 2007, and you have Ion coming out in 2018. So it's like the 2 kind of big albums for them are both a very early album and then a very current one. Red Fajita, someone better bring up Gatecreeper before I get more mad than a teenager whose parents just don't understand them. There is no denying we will be talking about Gatecreeper at some point in the new wave of old school death metal.
Not in the legend category, though.
Not in the legend category. But yeah, I mean, chat. Let's get Andrew.
Let's get Andrew's thoughts
do you have
on
any
Portal. Yeah.
Any Portal feels? While I put a poll in the chat.
I'm not really a Portal listener. That kind of like a Disso Death. Like,
Yeah.
I listen to like maybe Ulcerate, and
yeah.
like Death Spell Omega is kind of adjacent, but like that's about it for me.
My nemesis. My nemesis band. Well, I mean, this is okay. Well, the chat can make their voice heard. I think a Portal album. It's undeniable that a Portal album has to be at least up on the board, whether it's legend or not is to be decided. But Portal, I feel like, I mean, at the very least, their influence is pretty. I mean, they kind of get a genre of death metal associated with them. Like there's the cavernous death metal, which is not really a genre, and kind of they're the only ones making it.
The Walking Dead Professional Vitriol. It's death metal for revolver readers. Is that a diss? Is that a diss on Portal? Damn.
But it is weird that, like, I mean, it's not particularly intentionally listable music. It's not like there's some bands where you can hear, you go, oh, they tried to make a record that would have, like, you know, some mainstream success, and I'm not judging anyone for that or making any quantitative or value judgment on you doing that, but it doesn't seem like that's what Portal was trying to do. But they did.
Pain and Piss says we should have had a third option in the poll for no Portal.
Well, I mean, there's certainly an option. I mean, is Portal old school death metal? Well, I mean, again, this is the question. It's the new wave of old school death metal, so there is going to be bands that sound different. I mean, you know, Blood Incantation, we've talked about it a lot. They're a band that is, I mean, like, not obviously sounding like Portal, but you're getting into a band that is willing to kind of go into these weird soundscapes with their. We've got a bunch of no's. I mean, hey, look, if the chat ain't showing up in the poll, I mean, I can axe both of them from being anywhere in the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
I personally think it's a little bit of a stretch.
It's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. At least when I think of old school death metal, I basically think of it as not tech and not brutal. And Portal's like weirdness kind of veers off. Maybe they'd be better associated with tech.
Interesting.
Than like strictly old school.
Interesting vibe.
So who's the third for you, Andrew?
Undergang. Can't be anything but Undergang.
Yeah. Okay. So here's Give your thoughts. Undergang. Which album are we picking? Let's talk
First
about
one.
Undergang.
Indentet af Doden, however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
The blue one.
The blue one.
The blue one with
album.
the skull.
The blue album. Undergang's blue album.
I mean, yeah. They've got a little bit of Autopsy, a little bit of Bolt Thrower. I think maybe even a little bit of that like NYDM kind of sound.
Yeah.
When I first heard them, I was like, I didn't really like understand the vocals because they were kind of like burpy and growly, maybe a bit more like Demi-Lich in the vocals rather than something more recognizable, kind of like, I don't know, Will Romer or something. But I think like if you look at anything Maggot Stomp, they're also getting a lot from Undergang too.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, which album? Because I have one in there. I put the most recent.
The blue one with the skull.
The blue one. The blue one. The first one.
The first one. Yeah. Again, you're killing me with albums that don't have great covers online. Or there's all right. Here we go. Is that no? That's oh god. Yeah. So I mean, Undergang for me is a band that I at first was an idiot and kind of missed out on because I really hate that name. I understand it's a word in a language I don't speak, but for me, you know, it's one of those things where you kind of associate a band and you don't know what they sound like, but you kind of are like someone that just you go, oh, I'm pretty sure I know what they sound like based on their name. And I actually didn't really give Undergang enough of a listen until the most recent, the 2020 album, which I do have in the list, the album cover for, because I also feel that was kind of a bit of almost a bit of a breakout hit for them, where they've kind of got a
Descendant of Madness is Undergang.
Undergang, yeah.
Undergang.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks like Undergang. Let's be honest. It looks like Undergang. So I mean,
I think it sounds better as Undergang, though.
It definitely sounds better as Undergang.
Way more metal.
It's probably pronounced like that in Danish.
Yeah.
Something like Untergang or something.
Untergang. Yeah, I'm sure we've got a Dane in the chat to let us know. For me, definitely like kind of the Autopsy sound is definitely really felt very very bassy band, very like gross. Definitely feel like Undergang is like slimy. It's like a slimy band, which is you know, Autopsy and slime really go together well. and you kind of really feel that, that thickness of it. It's it's a real stew of a death metal. You really feel like it would be hard to stir. Like I said, late to the party on this one, but that's definitely, I love the kind of drippy gross, and it is something you start to feel, that thickness, that heaviness. I mean, you kind of get that in some of the more death doomy kind of stuff we've gotten nowadays. You mentioned Mortiferum earlier. Viscous. It's a viscous metal band.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
But Pain and Piss says Necrot.
Necrot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's inevitably will be talked about.
Yes.
So I mean, now a band that I've never been kind of sure of their impact. I don't know how big they are, but it's definitely a band that always stuck out to me because it's kind of, again, one of the first bands kind of, again, sounding like an old school record. You've got that great buzzsaw guitar tone. You've got just the awesome vocals that are, again, very, very old school. And I always hate saying their name out loud. Funebrarum.
Funebrarum? I think it's Funebrarum. Something like that.
Yeah, it's again a band that is incredibly annoyingly spelt for trying to say it with your mouth properly. But that was again one of those bands that kind of was in that first wave of bands putting out records right at the kind of turn of the 2010s that felt like it was like, the kind of accumulation of people trying to turn a big wheel and move out of the kind of melodic death metal that was dominating everything and kind of bring in an old school sound.
I think Funebram's first album was like 2001, right?
I think so, but when was the first album? This one was the one that kind of like, had your people starting to hear them, I think. What was the first album 2001, and then 2009, and then they're still a band but haven't done anything since.
I know Daryl has been saying the album's done for like a couple years now. Supposedly they're going to aim for next year to release it. I don't know how true that is, but that's what Daryl has said.
Okay, all right. We've got some in the chat. Eli Unger, what about Black Seed of Vengeance by Nile? Very much not what we're talking about. Very much in the exact opposite direction. Yes. Coffins again, but I mean Coffins. What is the difference between new wave old school death metal and death doom, which I do feel are different genres, and I feel like potentially Coffins are outside of the realm of what we're doing here. I mean, certainly a band on the peripheries, but what do you think? What do you think on Coffins?
I think they count. It's not like they're like a stoner doom band.
Yes, no.
And just on Nile, I think when we do tech, maybe
Yes.
Nile will be in there as a proto band, but they're definitely not.
Nothing to do with.
They're part of that branch that you talked about Morbid Angel creating, right?
Yeah.
Definitely in
They
that
are not.
direction. And they're almost peers, but not quite.
Their knuckles have not been dragged on the ground even once. They have very clean,
their knuckles are
well
too clean.
maintained
Yeah,
knuckles.
Absolutely.
Is Coffin's new wave? Aren't they from like '96? I mean, again, they're a band kind of earlier. I mean, they're still till now. Got to hang out with Coffins and see them in Japan, which is a great experience. I've also seen them at a punk squat in Paris. I've only seen Coffins in the coolest places. What was it called? La Miroiterie. It was this very strange place in Paris. I don't know if it still exists. It was like a punk squat, but it was like not normally you expect a punk squat to be like a tiny place. Yeah. It was this giant warehouse in downtown Paris, and shows would happen there. Guys would be just like drinking bags of wine and like shooting up and just all kinds of insane stuff going on around you. And then there's just a show there, and it's a place where normal bands would play, and you could buy a ticket and go. But yeah, weird experience, but definitely very cool. Big Coffins fan. But yeah, I don't know how they fit into this list. Metal Multiball with 100 bits. Thanks so much. Man, we're getting. This is one of those topics where every time we do one of these, I'm like, is this too narrow of a topic? Is there gonna be enough friction in the chat? And then immediately we've barely.
The answer is
started
always no.
Talking about it, and it's like we're good. All right, so that's a band I wanted to talk about. What do you got? What do you got next? What's your if you were making this list? What's your next?
Is it too early to talk about like Blood Incantation and Tomb Mold?
I don't think so. I mean, Blood Incantation and Tomb Mold are going to have to be talked about at some point, right?
In the essentials list, for sure.
That is the absolute,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, they're the kind of two bands that are crossing over into the mainstream, having people kind of really get on board with them, and yeah, let's hear your thoughts on them up here. Let's hear the peers' thoughts on what's going on with them.
I think those fit more into Essential Modern. So if we're still like on the legend part, I might choose something else.
Well, so basically the idea of the list is we're gonna go through things are gonna get dropped in various places, and at the end it doesn't, just because we put something in the legend now doesn't mean it can't be knocked out. Doesn't mean it can't change. This is a fluid list. This is always shifting and changing until the end of the stream.
We'll throw up some polls,
and then,
see what happens.
Yeah, put up some polls, and then next stream, at the start of next stream, people will be like, "I can't believe you didn't this," and it'll spill over into the next one, and it'll never die. And then 2 years from now, we'll be on a new platform and have the show presented in a new format,
Absolutely.
and people will be like, "I can't believe when you did last time you didn't include this." So
I think that's my cue, though. I got to jump.
you gotta jump.
Because all I was really here for was an autopsy rant.
Yeah.
But I got some homework to do because this
All right.
is really cool. Because a lot of these bands I'm not familiar with, the newer wave of stuff. And it's funny, people keep bringing up Bloodbath, right? And
it's a weird one.
maybe we missed them somewhere. I don't know, is it Proto? It's not Legend. It's too old. Or too old sounding. I don't know what the right way to look at it is. But we will... I'll resume. But thanks for hanging with me, Andrew. I appreciate your time, and I want to I gotta spend some time realizing that I went the melodic death metal route largely after the original wave of death metal, and then came back around on some of the bands that we've talked about and will be talking about: Gatecreeper, Blood Incantation, obvious reference points. I really like Carnation. It's probably like an outlier and maybe a bit too derivative for a lot of people because it is so like hammering over the head of that early Sunlight sound. But I like those guys. Black Breath are really good. But I feel like I'm going into the woodshed for some OSDM.
Good, sir.
Thanks for having
coming
me.
out.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care, buddy.
All right, buddy, just you and me now to carry it through. You had a little bit of thought time, and at some point we're also going to do a little bit of an interview with you because I've got some questions for you. But I got some questions. But for now, sir, what is the next album that you wanna kind of get the chats feel on, get talking about, get going in here on?
Let's go with Manor of Infinite Forms. Just because I feel like that was definitely Tomb Mold's breakout album.
Yeah.
The first one, Primordial Malignity.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot of hype, like in the underground, but it didn't really like kind of make them like super popular. I think part of it was like it was really hard to get a hold of because Blood Harvest was the label that released the first album. They're kind of slow, so I don't think they didn't like repress until like way later. And then like $20 Spin is a little bit more on the ball about as soon as something sells out, he'll like immediately repress it in like 20 different colors. So
the rainbow effect of 20.
So I think Manor I would call their breakout album.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I mean, with them, I mean, there's even like you kind of have every album having an impact, but I mean, certainly Manor is the them breaking out, and then you have Planetary Clairvoyance being like a crazy big hit. So that also could potentially be talked about up there. We could also, hey, this is, I mean, look, Tomb Mold, I don't think has put out a bad record. I do think Tomb Mold also is one of those bands where they've gotten big enough that people are already like, oh, Tomb Mold, they're just that. A friend of mine posted an article about like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson being like, hey, this raw meat diet is doing great for us. And he's like, I'm a fat guy and I want to lose weight. Anybody got any info on this diet? And I just posted something along the lines of like, I wouldn't take medical advice from a guy that was put into a Russian coma and a 54-year-old man who's doing steroids despite the fact that he is a comedian. And someone was like, blah, 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 alpha male, blah, blah, blah. By the way, Tomb Mold sucks. Just out of nowhere, just because they saw what I looked like, and they're like, this guy probably likes fucking Tomb Mold, and their shit, Jordan Peterson rules. And I feel like it's kind of hilarious that like Tomb Mold has been around for like 5 years basically, and they've already gotten to the point where people are like, Tomb Mold's ruining metal, they're too accessible, they're making this music. And you're like, dude, if you listen to Tomb Mold, it's just, I mean, this is old school death metal by guys that are a little weird and probably are into psychedelic drugs. I mean, that's really what this sounds like. I mean, it's cool to have a band that is crossing over that doesn't really feel like they're compromising on like making it kind of an accessible album, making kind of any compromises. They're just making, I mean, really amazing music, and I think all three albums have had an impact and are relevant. But we've got a poll in the chat. All three are up there to see how you feel about that. Planetary Clairvoyance was good, but I missed the more cavernous production style of Manor. That is a cool thing I thought about Planetary Clairvoyance, where it's, obviously there was a bit of a shift from Manor, but this is a band that really got up-jumped in terms of their status from that album, and they still managed to, on Planetary Clairvoyance, have an album that sounds not a big produced album, not a kind of a mainstream production. You do still kind of have that slightly cavernous production, even if it's reduced from the previous one. There's still kind of what a lot of us really like about the genre, which is a unique and kind of cool production style. How we feeling in the chat? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the crazy things about Tomb Mold, when I hear like people criticize them, it's like I've seen people say like they don't like their live aesthetic, because apparently they throw themselves around like Converge on stage. It's like really offensive to like basement dwelling black metalers.
Yeah.
And the other one is like there are people who think like Tomb Mold is just like a retread of old bands, but I think Tomb Mold is probably one of the most unique new bands there is. I mean, you can hear little bits of like maybe like a Dramalex Psychostasia, but I mean, how many death metal bands are having like Southern Fried riffs like they do on Manor? Like I can't think of a single one.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it does feel like they're a very unique thing, and the reason they're resonating with so many people is, people get excited when they haven't heard something before a lot of times, and it does feel like something you haven't heard before. And hey, well, Manor of Infinite Forms is the choice in the chat by a very narrow margin, 14-13, with 1 for Primordial Malignity. Primordial getting 1 vote, Planetary getting 13, but Manor of Infinite Forms taken with 14 votes. That's in there. We'll have to at some point decide what's staying in the legend, what's going in the essential modern category, but I don't want to stop the ball rolling. Okay, well, do you want to, you mentioned 2 bands. Do you want to continue with the second band that is frequently grouped together?
Got to be Starspawn from Blood Incantation.
Yep.
I think personally for me, I between like Hidden History and Starspawn, I think Hidden History probably has a better sound, because like on Starspawn, if you listen to like the kick and the snare, especially during blast beats, they can kind of disappear. And I don't know if they like triggered the kick and the snare in the second album, or they just recorded it differently. But I think it sounds bigger, but I think the songs are definitely better on the first one, and it's the breakout hit. So
Yeah, the breakout hit for sure. And this is this is where you kind of start getting the maybe Blood Incantation departure into maybe they're an ambient band now. Who knows where they're gonna go? But I mean, it is a very cool album for that. You'd pick Hidden Histories. Starspawn gave them their fan base. Starspawn was a bigger record, but I think the scene liked Hidden History better. Well, hey, I mean, again, we've got some friction in the chat. We can poll all day, baby. We love polls around here. I love a poll. I love clicking a poll. There's nothing quite as satisfying as putting a poll in the chat and watching those little guys go at it. Yeah, because I mean, you do have two distinctly different albums. I think with something like Tomb Mold, we're kind of just arguing over like which songs we like better. Whereas with something like Blood Incantation, you're arguing like what approach you like better. Because I mean, Hidden History's 4 songs. You get some kind of massive ones with these big kind of atmospheric breaks throughout them. And is that your vibe? I mean, it's certainly something interesting and unique kind of happening and it's a part of the movement, and it is a unique part of it where, you're getting kind of the I guess the full expression of the kind of slowness that you get. And strangely, the Blood Incantation slowness is almost like nice. It's a weird contrast where when they do get kind of spacier, it's not like it's sounding scary. It's kind of giving you a bit of a reprieve from the kind of old school death metal that they'll go back into. But seems like the chat is pretty decided. I mean, we're not even halfway into the poll, but you've got a 13-5 for Starspawn. So I'm gonna say it. Their ambient album is lame. I don't think that's a particularly. You don't have to be scared about
controversial.
Saying that. Yeah, Lava Squiddy. Please include Blood Incantation as Morbid Angel for people who have never tried to summon a Sumerian deity option in the poll. Personally think Hidden History's got a bit too smart for Blood Incantation's own good. It didn't drag its knuckles as much as it should have. Oh shoot, we've got a raid. Herman Lee. Big Herman Lee. Big salute to Herman Lee. Gosh darn it. One of the finest Twitch streamers in the whole world, creating all kinds of content and really, I mean, carving out a space for us metalheads here on Twitch. A real pioneer, kind of going out into the untamed wilderness to settle a spot and then to have the pilgrims follow behind it and establish a little colony. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not following Herman Lee, Guitar God, Herman Lee, Twitch God, Herman Lee, all around gentleman and scholar, please make sure to toss a follow. And hey, Inky, thanks for gifting that sub to Herman Lee. And thanks to all the raiders coming in. Currently, we were talking about, we had a power metal episode a couple of weeks ago. It would have been a perfect time. Right now, we were talking about the new wave of old school death metal, which is definitely in a different spot. But we are currently talking about Blood Incantation, who are into aliens and space, which fits well. Oops.
I always wondered what Dragon Force would sound like if they kind of dropped the melodic vocals, and because like they did that Evil Dead cover, yeah. I think a couple years ago, and it didn't sound too bad.
Just, I mean, I'd certainly love a Dragon Force, but with brutal vocals. Just toss one of these, have a little song featuring one of the old school death metal acts we're talking about. Jesus, and then we're getting a ton of follows. Thanks to everybody for following. Everybody, make sure you're following Herman Lee. Just amazing streams. Definitely a guy who knows how to bring the party on Twitch. And someone, hopefully, we gotta do something together sometime soon. The Big Luscious with the Twitch Prime, thanks so much. To Hot for Nishi, the ambient album was fucking awesome. I'll Die on This Hill. Yeah. Der Bierkaiser Power Deck, yeah. Lava Squiddy, Ayo, this Dragon Force Evil Dead cover slaps. Yeah. I mean, I still, man, seeing Dragon Force live is a total blast. And what was the year? Seeing them? Where did I see them? One of the most fun shows I've ever been to, for sure, was seeing Dragon Force. What year would it have been?
2010, 2011,
2006
Oh,
on the
shit.
Inhuman Rampage tour. They had the fucking clock up and everything, and before they'd play, they'd clamp down. Like, it was a blast. It was so fun. So fun.
I was too much of a poser to go to shows back then, but that
Oh,
was like
yeah.
when I got into Dragon Force was when they dropped Inhuman Rampage.
Yeah, I mean, that was, how old are you?
I'm 32 or 31. 31 still. 31 still.
I'm 35 still. So yeah, definitely. Just we're in that crosshairs where, I mean, what a great band to just get you stoked on metal. I mean, I'll always be able to listen to Dragon Force records, especially the early ones for me, and just anytime I need to take care of business, trying to bike somewhere and I'm late, got to bike there fast. Boom, Dragon Force. Having a little problems with my lifts. Dragon Force. And I mean, so here's an interesting, we've talked a little bit about a couple of bands. The Blood Incantation was a pretty resounding win. So we've talked a little bit about Blood Incantation. Let's talk about a little guy that kind of appeared out of nowhere in like 2016, just from 0 to 60 out the gates. I mean, it seems like I don't know how you created Rip to Shreds and and kind of just out of nowhere, like, first album, hey, let's just put an album out there. Boom, immediate. It was like there was no build up. There was no like you being in some shitty bands where I can look at on Metallum and see some like really embarrassing logos and you with a bad haircut. There's none of that. It just went from like you like materialized from a different universe.
I still had that demo only band right before Disincarnation.
So you had one that still doesn't explain.
That's 2017.
2017. So for 1 year, I dicked around. I had a demo only band, and then boom, almost immediately, I mean, from the outside, what seemed like a very large record that I can't pronounce.
Oh yeah. It would be in Chinese. It would be pronounced like Mai Zhang, but like
Maizang?
Mai Zhang. That's usually how Americans say it.
Yeah, Maizang. All right. So yeah, like, what's the? Give us a little bit of the origin story, and also like, did it kind of click as almost immediately as it did, and what was the kind of transition like that for you from a guy just in a demo band to you got a flexi disc in a magazine that normally those you're sharing some space with some bands that have been around for like 40 years.
I mean, it's really weird, especially because like I wasn't even really writing music until like 2015 or so. Like before that, I just kind of played guitar for fun or dicked around, and then like in 2015, I started taking like private lessons from this one teacher in the East Bay. I live in California in the South Bay now. I used to work in the East Bay. And then, so I was taking some private lessons, and the teacher was just like really inspiring, and he like pushed me to get better, to work on my own music, and then I guess that's really where it started. That and hearing the second Dead Congregation album and the second Horrendous album, because when I heard those, I was like, I need to start writing my own music, right? Like I can't not.
Right? Oh, that's great. That's so cool. And yeah, and so how quickly did things kind of like click with Rip to Shreds? I mean,
it was really weird. Because like when I was still in that demo band, I wrote a couple of songs that would end up on the first Rip to Shreds album. But I don't know, it just felt like I had 8 songs, so it was like time to turn it into an album. And then suddenly it was like, oh, people are actually interested in hearing it.
And I mean, now you're kind of you. It seems you're a man about town now. You've got fun side projects. You're hired gun in some bands. What was the one that I grabbed the copy of? The white one with the dragon on the cover.
Asath.
Azath.
That's not a hired gun. I
Oh
write
yeah.
like about half the songs in that.
Oh okay. All right.
That one's with my buddy Brandon.
And what's the story with? So I mean, the fact that you're you and you live in California, but then the live band is in Singapore.
Oh, so originally Rip to Shreds was like a one man band. I didn't have band members or really like at that time like no one was really interested to play with me. So I think sometime in like 2019, some dude reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I want to book your band for shows." And I was like, "Well, shit, I'm the only person in the band." So I reached out to like some people that I knew in Taiwan, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys want to put together a live band and let's play some shows?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I think actually that guy who reached out to me for some festival in Europe ended up saying, "You know what? Forget forget it."
But I mean, hey, it turns out he's the impetus. So you know, it didn't even matter that he didn't book you. Thank him for for the transition.
Yeah. So I mean, and then once I got that like the second album, the one that came out on Pulverized, I was like, I have to play some stateside shows. And then from there, I talked to some people that I knew here. Actually, uh, my drummer. So I'm sure everyone in the chat knows who Tsunami is, right? Everyone knows Tsunami. Originally, Joseph was going to play bass for Rip to Shreds, and he was. I think he ended up he had to do like some work thing when we were going to play our first show, so he recommended his friend who's the bassist now, and also when I couldn't find a drummer, he recommended the drummer of Spinebreaker to play. And Spinebreaker is like kind of a local band that ended up. I mean, the guys in it went on to do Gulch and Tsunami and like pretty much every other popular hardcore band in the Bay right now.
We got some. Yes, it's I, David. Hell yeah, Tsunami. Vok want a RTS Tsunami collab split. Get a split. Dear Beer Guys are saying Rip to Shreds was a blast at this Decibel Metal and Beer Festival in December. Or an HGT pup split. And I mean, we can talk about grind time a little bit. I mean, is that so? I mean, was that? I mean, clearly you just a guy with a fun sense of humor that wanted to kind of have some fun, joke around. I mean, one of the most iconic album covers of all time, if you ask me. Just like flawless.
I mean, so Hokugo Grind Time. That was like my buddy needed like a live guitar player for Anti Music Fest, and then so when I was learning his riffs, I was like, this is really fun. I should just like do something on my own. And that's kind of where it grew out of. And I have a new album. I'm dealing with like the fucking pressing plant right now.
Yeah,
going back and forth.
You know, everybody's you gotta get in line behind Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Every pressing plant.
It should be out before the end of the year. Crossing my fingers.
And then you're also a shred god now. You're also a shred god.
It's like it's studio magic. It's studio magic. I'm super sloppy live.
Damn, shred god giving some admissions. We've got a Hokugago grind time live when question. That's a local.
When I'm not as
local-
busy.
When you're
When
not
I'm not
busy.
as busy.
So I mean, when is Andrew Lee not going to be as busy? I mean, I feel like it's you know, there's sometimes you get some opportunities in your life, and then you do that. You're doing that opportunity, and you're like, boy, I'm busy. Once this is over, I'm going to be less busy, and then you're like, this opportunity is going to lead to only opportunities that will make me more busy than I currently am.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm working on like 3 different albums right now. Bunch of splits. Can't talk about any of it yet, really, but when they're done, it's going to be really fun, I think.
That's exciting. That's exciting. So, and then just a question: you got this great setup here. You know, you got a good. Yeah, everything's accessible. You got a good microphone. Everything's set up well. Any thoughts of ever doing a Twitch stream? I mean, as a guy who's making a hentai grind, I mean, Twitch seems like a natural home for you.
God, I mean, I don't even know what I would stream. I mean, I could stream visual novels, I guess.
That
But
would be great.
when,
I mean,
when I play visual novels, I want to listen to like the music there and not like Archagathis or something.
but I mean, you know, hey, your commentary on visual novel games could be very fun. But I mean, you don't have to do gaming. I mean, you know, Daniel DK, our resident shred wizard. I mean, he just basically plays a concert a couple times a week. Just, I mean, you know, writing music, just jamming some of your favorite tunes. There's a lot of options. I'm sure a lot of the chat would be into that.
I think part of it is like you've seen some musicians talk about how like being a content creator kind of takes away from the
Yeah.
time that they have
Yeah.
to work on music. Especially like if you want to play in live bands, you know, you gotta put your time into practicing that. If you're in a whole bunch of different bands where you are like a primary songwriter, there's a lot of time in that. You know, I don't think Rip to Shreds isn't big enough to need a manager or like a dedicated booking agent yet. But I feel like if I was trying to juggle all these things, I might have to get one or something like that.
Or have
So
a nervous breakdown or something.
yeah, that too.
We do have, yeah, Nick Rattlehead said though instant sub, and then we've got, yeah, Inky Metal Twitch's best Twitch. Yeah, the pandemic really, a lot of people, you know, you saw kind of what you're talking about where that balance where you're like, oh, when am I gonna have time? And then everybody's tours dropped out and they're like, well, I guess I have time now. I had been bugging DK to get on Twitch for like years. I've been like, come on, we're practicing guitar anyways. Just do it in front of a camera. You're entertaining. People will love it. Got him on there and then accidentally made him one of Twitch's biggest metal stars. It's just like, God damn it. You're supposed to get on Twitch and enjoy it, but be smaller than me. So I still had the power dynamic in the relationship. Damn it. Yeah. Oh, hey, Deadpan with a good point. Waifu ranking streams. There you go. That could be your every
That's a pretty good idea.
waifu ranking streams.
I have pretty strong opinions when it comes to waifus.
Or you could waifu theme song writing stream. You know?
There are a lot of good yanderes to write death metal for.
Yeah, right. Come on, you know. I mean, I can think of. Of my monster girlfriend. Just every monster girlfriend is just begging for a different genre of metal. But speaking of metal, we should probably. I do want to check with the chat though. I mean, I feel like the guest always hates this because every stream I've done, I've had a guest who made an album that has to be on the list, and every guest is uncomfortable when we talk about it. But I don't think there's any way we could not have a Rip to Shreds album on this list because. See, no guest likes this part of the stream, but it's inevitable.
I hate talking about my own music.
I know, right? It's so funny. Everybody's like, "Can we not put my album sucks? I don't want it. No, let's ignore it." Like, what the... So,
can I put the unreleased new album on there instead of the ones that are out?
Unreleased new album, yeah. Damn, can you give me the album artwork for it so I have something to put up?
I think Relapse would kill me if I did that.
Yes, I think they would as well. So, hey, chat, we have the gentleman and scholar in here, but two amazing albums. I mean, I feel it's funny that you talk about the I mean, I guess so. It's kind of a weird. Is it a weird coincidence, or they were just the people that fit? Where I do feel like you can feel a bit of a punky kind of hardcore energy in Ripped to Shreds. Was that just kind of a coincidence that you wound up with these like guys sort of from the
Hardcore kids in my band.
in
Yeah.
your band?
That's kind of hard to say. I feel like, I mean, for one, I was like a huge fan, I am still a huge fan of Spinebreaker. So I'm sure some of that like bleeds in. But I feel like the punk influence in Rip to Shreds comes a little bit more from bands like maybe like Celtic Frost or Asocial or like any grindcore band like Repulsion, Terrorizer, early Napalm Death. So I think and of course there's Coffins. They're like a D-beat band,
Yeah.
right? So I wouldn't really say hardcore. Hardcore punk, yes, but
Yes,
not
hardcore.
like modern. Yeah.
Yeah. When I say, I mean, because I just don't listen to other types of hardcore. When I say hardcore, I basically mean crust and D-beat.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. It's definitely a big part. The new album has some very crusty parts.
Ooh.
It's like basically just grindcore in a lot of places.
Damn, HGT becomes your main band. You bail on Ripped to Shreds. This is me now, Mom. Deal with it. Yeah, well, okay. Looks like Luan is the choice of the albums. I mean, both great. I still my thing. I have the long sleeve T-shirt. Man, what a great shirt that is. That's I almost wore it, but I thought that was like wearing the band's shirt to the concert. So
Yeah.
I was like, so I wore a band that won't make the list, I know, but I will talk about at some point, because I feel like they should be more well known than they are. They're fantastic. Yeah, someone pointed out that the D is not necessary, and love the crust. What is crust? Crust is a type of punk music that's very similar to D-beat, and if you don't know what D-beat is, you could probably just say crust and D-beat are the same thing. For if you don't know what crust is and you don't know what D-beat is, there's no point differentiating between the two. Really, it's a style of punk that is fairly more and hardcore. That's definitely has a metallic twinge to it, and at its backbone has a very great drum beat that it shares a lot of usage with thrash, but the greatness of a D-beat drum beat. D-beat equals listening to Discharge and Doom. Yeah. Deadpan
Anti-Cymex too.
Anti-Cymex, yep. Punk rock for
Mob
people
47.
Yep.
Yep.
Punk rock for people who don't like bathing. Yep, also correct. Yep. And then probably the band that, you know, as a metalhead people might know, that really kind of seemed to be embraced by the metal community the most. A Tragedy, you know, very, very, very metallic D-beat band. D-beat and crust are the only good punk subgenres. Yeah, fair enough. Although there'll always be a soft spot for pop punk in my heart, because that's what I grew up with as a teen. Hey, well, my first live show was Sum 41, the Fat Lip album release at the El Macombo in Toronto. True story.
Actually, I think the first live show I ever went to in high school, I don't even know their name, but a friend was playing, and then like the headliner was some touring pop punk band. They were actually pretty good. I have no idea. I would love to know who they were, because they sounded good live, but like I have absolutely no idea at this point.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, where you just like think back to shows where I'm just like, oh yeah, I saw a great punk show at in the gym of the JCC, our Jewish Community Center in Toronto. Who played? Fucking no clue. Can you find out? Absolutely zero. There's no way I could. There's absolutely no way I could find out that information for you. But I had a good time. All right, so I mean, there's another band that has been mentioned a bit definitely a band that kind of really seemed to have a pretty big impact, especially the first. I mean, I felt like the first album really blew up. Necrot mentioned in the chat a little bit by Big Dog Zone, and we had mentioned Necrot a couple of times throughout. Feelings on Necrot.
I think they're a pretty good band. I mean, Chad is obviously like a local legend. He plays in like basically every band here now. You know, he's in like Mortuous, he's in Acephalix and Vastum. I think he's still playing in like Dead Pressure or Socioclast. Not sure. But yeah, Necrot I think is probably our biggest Bay Area band right now.
Yeah.
I will say though, the one thing I wish is I wish they had a second guitarist live because when Sonny is playing his solos, like the guitar just totally drops out, and that's kind of like a bummer. And that's why I got a second guitarist, because I was like, playing solos without a second guitarist is a real bummer.
Oh yeah, damn. Well, hey, thank God he didn't have one so that you could realize that, right? Otherwise, you'd be playing live with that. So hey, well, okay, so. Blood Offerings, I feel like, was kind of the definitely the breakout hit, but then Mortal, of course, you have a breakout hit, and then of course you're gonna have a lot more people paying attention to an album. So as I'll keep those polls rolling, chat. We got Necrot versus Necrot's Blood Offerings versus Necrot Mortal. I'm partial to Blood Offerings again. It was just like 2017. It was part of the forefront of this movement. I feel like gained a lot of steam in like 2016, 2017. Some big pops for bands. You've got Necrot, Blood Offerings in 2017. You've got Two Mold's first album coming out in 2017. Gatecreeper, who we'll talk about, first album 2016. Really, like, that was the year. It feels like it's been going on so much longer, but definitely we're in the thick of it once 2017 kind of hits that. I would argue Necrot Mortal for a more recent inclusion. I think it topped Blood Offerings in every way. Yeah, I have a hard issue. Two things. Hearing Necrot for the first time, so you're always going to kind of be drawn to a first album. And then for me, I mean, I really love the Necrot album cover. It's great art. The tattoo shop I get tattooed at, a great place called Wartooth in Toronto, has the full art on the wall in the framed with no band logo on it. Just the full
Which one, the first or the second album?
The Blood Offerings, and it's such great art. And I feel like Mortal, I don't love the art as much, and I'm such a I don't know. I really have a whole album experience. Album art really fills me with a certain feeling. I musically, aesthetically, I like bringing everything to a package, and Blood Offerings, I felt like really, like, that cover's so great, the sound's so great, and it really, again, one of those bands that kind of just comes out of nowhere and hits really hard, and everyone gets super excited about.
If I had to choose, I would probably be a hipster and choose the Labyrinth.
You son of a bitch. just making my life impossible here. I have to listen to Necrot's discography again, because I listened to those two albums when they came out, and they are nice but didn't click for me. But I have a problem with first impressions. I mean, I will say of the bands on this list, Necrot is probably the one doing that is probably the most
straightforward,
yeah, doing the least kind of it's these proto bands. Necrot is really influenced by they're kind of bringing that to the modern day, but everyone else, we kind of definitely has a little bit of an outside hook as well, where they're like, we're doing old school death metal, but here's our twist on it, whereas Necrot's just like, hey, here's some very quality old school death metal. But I mean, again, like I said at the start, it kind of makes sense, because they were one of the first records that really popped out of all the kind of guys that we're talking about now that have big albums. And so, the first one that really hit is, of course, gonna be a little more probably normal than and then everybody else can kind of go from there and get a little weirder.
I personally,
yeah,
I was gonna say, I personally find it. I feel like it would be really difficult to imagine hearing an album like Blood Offerings in like 1990. I think I feel like Necrot is pulling a little bit more from like the Bay Area, like crust death metal kind of sound with like Stormcrow or Skaven, or I I don't know about Dystopia. I don't think they're crusty enough to say Dystopia, but I feel like they're a little bit more of like a natural uh, outgrowth of the Bay Area scene rather than something like I'm not trying to throw shade on like Lick from Sweden, but
Yeah.
like Lick is a band that like you would totally believe, oh, this is definitely something straight out of 1990.
Yeah, yeah, very much like we like the Swedish sound. The Swedish sound is what we make. We are making the Swedish sound. Boom, go.
Yeah, I mean, and just for me, I feel like Necrot, not they play like straightforward music, but it's not straightforward in the sense that they could have literally been from the 90s for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, Skeletal Remains getting a bunch of like in the chat. I mean, Entombed of Chaos is definitely I reviewed that. I think it's the strongest Skeletal Remains. I feel like Skeletal Remains is one of those bands that like has just been kneecapped by like constant like just never being able to have yeah. Poor Chris just fucking afloat at sea, just desperately grabbing for band members, and it just is just trying to pick up water with your bare hands is always just draining out. And every time you're like, oh, I think he's in a groove, I think he's found, and then it's a new band, and Skeletal Remains has never struck as like a band like Ripped to Shreds where there's a core songwriter and then you're kind of getting some people in there. It does seem like Skeletal Remains is a band, but he's never really been able to hold together the bands to kind of perfect a sound.
Yeah, I don't know 100% about the band dynamics. As far as I know, Chris writes all the songs.
Yeah.
But I can like definitely hear, like a big stylistic shift between like each album, and like each album. Do the first two albums have the same lineup? The first two that were on FDA Records. I know the third one had Johnny from Fiend on drums, and the one after that was with Charlie from Ascended Dead.
So
I think.
he lost a drummer for the second one.
Hmm.
So you had Chris Reyes on drums. The second one doesn't have a credited drummer. I don't know who would have been playing drums then.
Could have been Chad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know Chad was on like a Rude, and Rude I think shared some members with Skeletal Remains.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then I do feel like the most recent Entombment of Chaos, strong lineup. Hopefully he can keep. Although, oh no, never mind. People changed already. I was like, I haven't checked in since I reviewed it. Hopefully he can keep that lineup. Different bass player. Fuck.
and different drummer.
And different drummer. And I
think Charlie was only like a studio drummer for the fourth album.
Yeah.
My friend Pierce from Torture Rack is like the permanent drummer for Skeletal Remains now, and I mean it sounds
like permanent with Skeletal Remains.
It sounds like it's gonna be. It sounds like it's a pretty stable lineup this time.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. Carlos Cruz played drums from 2014 to 2015, but that was live. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'll give it to them. It's definitely very death metal to not be able to keep a band together for for more than one album. Very death metal, very old school death metal, certainly. We've had, I mean, kind of a smaller band, but it's cool to see kind of the representation in chat for them because I'm a big fan. Witch Vomit getting some love in the chat, which is
Witch Vomit goes so hard. Like, like that Poison Blood EP is like one of my
That
favorite
Poison
things
Blood
ever.
EP is like one of my favorite things. I mean, it's like I listen to that. It's pretty. I'm not an EP guy. I tend to like a nice album. I like to listen to 45 minutes. I hate having to change records all the time. I like to sit in a groove. But man, that EP. It's very rare that a band has an EP that I prefer over the albums, and that EP is like fucking flawless.
Yeah, there's like zero fat. Every second is like exciting, and like and everyone in the band loves Witch Vomit too. We're all big fans. So like we play the same day as Witch Vomit, same stage at Northwest Terror. We're all
Oh
like
yeah.
super excited to see him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Professor Vitriol, which Vomit has A+ live banter too?
Oh yeah, I think they said they say something like, "This is a song about graves," and then the next song, this song is also about graves, something like that.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and oh man, that was I was really sad because the Poison Blood came out and I was so stoked on it, and I didn't think to look because it was an EP. And I loved the art on the EP so much. And then I found out that they made a T-shirt of it, and then it was sold out when I went to get it.
Sold out.
But it's back. They did another run of it, and I got it. And it's just like, I'm just so happy in that. I put that shirt on. I feel that EP. I love the way it looks. They did a perfect job with everything on it. Oh man, Witch Vomit. Love to see the Witch Vomit representation in the chat. Let's see. I mean, the only thing I thought was that I wasn't sure if Witch Vomit was quite like big enough to kind of be in the chat, but let's find out. Witch Vomit question, and then we'll do yay or nay. Are Witch Vomit big enough to make it on the list? Are they having enough of an impact? The album cover I loaded, obviously, Buried Deep in a Bottomless Grave is really, yeah, again, they're, kind of the breakout hit for them. Would love to see it up there. Let's see how the chat thinks about it. Do we have any Witch Vomit? Damn! Off the top, we got some nice Witch Vomit representation. Loving it, loving it, loving it. And then I think after Witch Vomit, we probably have to talk about that other behemoth in the genre that we haven't mentioned yet, that we've mentioned a bunch.
A fatalist? Not the fatalist.
Yeah. You got it. You got it in one. Damn, Witch Vomit, very strong representation. Love to see it. We're already at 16-3. Yay versus nay. Yeah, I mean, just a really cool band that is, bringing it is really kind of the key word, I think, with them. Every time they put out something, you're like, I wonder if they're gonna have like chilled out a bit, and then the stage, and you're like, no, Witch Vomit's still fucking crazy. I love it. Witch Vomit, mine or yours? Our Vomit. Witch Vomit, our Vomit, clearly. 21-3. 21-3. Polls still got a minute left, and we're already at 21-4. Damn, someone really. I like the 4 pop for 3-4. Someone being like, no. Witch Vomit.
I think if we were picking an album, it would have to be it would have to be the new one, Buried Deep.
Yeah. I mean, really.
I mean, it's not like the first one was. I mean, it was a good album, but I feel like Poison Blood was just like such a huge leap ahead of it, and then like maybe Buried Deep is a little bit below that. But I don't know if you want to put like a EP on this list.
We can't start. We start opening up to EPs. EPs are like a constant struggle with Banger, because every once in a while, a great EP like that comes out and people are like, why didn't you review that EP? And it's like, because if we review one EP, then we open the whole door. And but yeah, it wasn't a bummer. Bummer isn't the right word, but you're like, holy shit, how are they going to top this EP? And they're like, okay, they didn't quite top the EP, but this is certainly.
They came pretty close. Yeah,
they came pretty close. This certainly feels like a great continuation out of it. I'm not bummed by this record at all. I'm still probably going to listen to the EP a little bit more, but really happy that they kind of nailed something like that. So the chat 24-5, loving the Witch Vomit. Love to see it. Love to see it. Love to see it. So I mean, I feel like we undeniably now have to talk about, I mean, outside of Tomb Mold, I guess potentially the biggest band in the.
I feel like No, you're right.
Gate
Of the
Creeper.
new bands, probably the biggest.
Gate Creeper might be the biggest, and it's interesting. Gate Creeper, again, we were talking about, each band kind of having their own little hook, and Gate Creeper being, I mean, technically, I feel like you could refer to them as a deathcore band because they are a death metal band with hardcore influences. But of course, unlike what is actually deathcore, the death metal they're playing is the old school death metal that we're talking about, and the hardcore they're playing is, again, kind of bringing it back to the crust and D beat that's going to come up, because there's certainly the influences, or the influences of the influences for the bands we're talking about, is there's definitely some crust and D beat in there. Everyone's got a Discharge record floating around in their collection. Thoughts on what Gate Creeper's doing?
I wouldn't point so much to stuff like Discharge, maybe more Hatebreed. I would say that Gate Creeper does have some like mosh riffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought their last EP, the Unexpected Reality, I thought that was really cool. The first half was like all like super short, punky, grindy things. I was like, it sounds really good. It has really good energy. So I like that EP a lot.
EP, bringing it back to the EP, God damn it. And hey, Fungus Harvester with the 420 bits for Gate Creeper. Hell yeah, very kind, much appreciated. Smoke them if you got them, and if it's legal where you live. I'm on the internet, I can't be promoting you breaking the law. I can only promote breaking the law. They even did an Amon Amarth song. Yeah, it seems like all I hear about old school death metal is Gate Creeper this, Gate Creeper that. They are certainly the band. They're certainly like the debutante at the ball. They are very much being kind of embraced, kind of getting carted off to the whole world, not just the metal world, and kind of getting that underground metal flack. Oh, Gate Creeper, they're not, blah, blah, blah.
Too big.
They're too big. It's like, Jesus Christ. So, chat, we do have two Gate Creeper albums. Obviously, both of them have had a pretty big splash, been pretty impactful in the genre. Again, both of them having that kind of mainstream kind of crossover success. Crossover success for a band with a bit of crossover in it. So let's see what's the chat feeling. What's the chat feeling? What are we thinking on this? We're getting close to having to kind of finalize a list. So this is the new Gate Creeper EP. D-Beat stuff is fantastic. That's what I listen to most from them. Yeah, it's interesting that it's almost like, the funny thing is when no one in the punk community is complaining about Gate Creeper. Everybody's stoked. It's just the surly metalheads being like, "Meh."
I think right now there's like a really big crossover between hardcore and death metal,
Yeah.
and a lot of the like big bands now, like I wouldn't say like deliberately appeal, but like they're from the hardcore scene too. So automatically anything they write is gonna have appeal to what they're into. So maybe that could be one reason why you see like a lot of metalheads kind of like poo-poo this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Lava Squiddy bringing up something. I find it absolutely hilarious that Gate Creeper is in the same subgenre as Blood Incantation, who basically openly said they were lame posers with no originality. That is a quote very much taken out of context, and it's in text, not video. So I guarantee you when Blood Incantation said that, they were referencing the fact that that's the way a bunch of metalheads feel about them, and not openly expressing how they feel about them. And also, you could pull the flip side and you go, who the fuck cares what an ambient band thinks about old school death metal? I mean, like, if we want to start throwing stones at either band, I mean, both Blood Incantation and Gate Creeper are taking some weird, unnecessary black eyes from some people that are with no social skills, it seems. Just the same people that are telling you to separate the art from the artist when a Nazi comes out with a new album. Just separate the art from the artist. Love the fact that they're Nazis, and who cares what their music sounds like? Is what I feel like those people's whole vibe is. Ambient essentialist when the ambientists of metals, metals.
I
Top
mean, you
10
got like
times
what?
that metal
Mortis?
went
That's it?
ambient.
Like Mortis counts, right? And I guess I mean Varg obviously
Varg, yeah.
does the ambient thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The top 10
Who
albums
else?
to albums to have a racist D&D campaign too.
That man, that rule book is like one. It's one of the dumbest things you'll ever read anywhere.
Oh, I know. All races get -5 to stats, except the white race. Ogrish, they're too mainstream. That's when you know you haven't talked to normal people. I mentioned power violence to my girlfriend, and she thought I was fucking with her. I mean, yeah, it's weird when you talk to normal people. Everybody goes like, it's funny that people that like are wearing a Morbid Angel shirt are like, Gatecreeper's a mainstream solo band, and you're like, dude, those are like, you're like metal millionaires on your shirt. But yeah, I mean, I was at a party
they
once.
sold gold, right?
They
One of their
gold?
albums,
Did they?
Morbid Angel.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're the only. I think the second highest grossing, just behind Cannibal Corpse. I think it's Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel for like units moved. We've got now the chat is fully embraced this ambient lock horns that we are not doing. We are not doing an ambient lock horns. We're getting Passage d'Hiver, even their metal's ambient. Wolves in the Throne Room ambient phase. I mean, you're all right. You're all correct. Morbid Angel was ambient. Yeah, Morbid Angel in their ambient album. Loving it. Loving the switch. We're suddenly shifting gears. We've got like 15 minutes left of the stream, and suddenly this is now an ambient stream. So, I mean, Morbid Angel proto-ambient for their 1-minute ambient interludes. Yeah, there you go. Amon Amarth's got to be up there on sales. I mean, you know what's actually fun to do? I don't know if you've ever done this. If you go to like just the RIA.com, there's like literally a search bar, and if you type in any band, it'll just like it'll spit out any. Oh, Morbid Angel, nothing. Morbid Angel didn't go gold. Cannibal Corpse. The Cannibal Corpse must have gone gold. Really, Cannibal Corpse didn't go gold either. Or maybe there's some issues with SoundScan era nonsense.
Oh yeah, that's
what
true.
it is. Yeah, that's what happened. The shift to SoundScan, they moved all their units before the SoundScan thing, and yes. I mean, according to, because you can straight up go to RIA.com, but this is the RIA list. This doesn't necessarily mean the album didn't go gold. It just didn't go RIA gold. But yeah, it's a fun website where you can literally just be like, oh, I wonder what year did these, and you can see like hilarious things where you'll watch like, a band will come out, nobody will care, and then one of the guys will like go on to a new band, and then when that album goes gold, his like first album also goes gold like 2 months later. But yeah, all right. So Gatecreeper, we're getting close to the end, so maybe what's someone we haven't talked about yet that you feel needs to be in there?
I mean, horrendous. You got to have horrendous in there. I feel like I mean, Dark Descent Records had a whole bunch of like pretty big albums before Ecdysis, but I feel like Ecdysis was like that 1-2 punch of Ecdysis and Anareta was what like kind of really took Dark Descent to the next level. So you just got to have horrendous in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a great time for independent labels. I mean, you're getting some like between a bunch of them, we have like there's been a bunch mentioned to where just even thinking about something like Dark Descent, Blood Harvest. No matter what kind of scale we're at, we've got like a pretty decent fun label that you can kind of consistently go to and kind of expect something to hit with you and check every month and be like, Oh, I wonder what's going on this month. I wonder if there's anything solid
I
going on
mean,
this month, and they're almost
really,
halfway through.
most of the metal labels are independent, right? I know
Yeah.
like Century Media is owned by like Sony, and Roadrunner is also owned by Sony or something, or Warner. But
Yeah.
like, and Nuclear Blast is owned by someone, but
Somewhat.
like,
Yeah.
Earache and Metal Blade
Yeah.
and Relapse, Hammerheart, Peaceful, all those are still independent as far as I know.
Yeah. Eli Unger, as we said, in Nile in no way works. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You might as well say like, does Madonna fit into this? And you're like, yeah, well, I guess I can see some Madonna influences on. Yeah, no. Queeping Death, Queeping Death.
No, that's like straight right in between the halfway point of hardcore and death metal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you are getting a little more to the outskirts. I mean, and hey, we've danced a little bit over there, but yeah, Horrendous is a little bit proggier than some of these bands. That is a valid thing. Horrendous is kind of like the new wave of progressive heavy metal that's actually heavy instead of being progressive.
At least the first two are still pretty death metal, I would say. The first two
Yeah,
albums.
yeah. Frozen Soul. So Frozen Soul is one of those bands that I definitely included, and I feel like is definitely worth a mention. But
Hmm.
they're so new. Like I mean, this is the album's like isn't even a year old yet. Is it a year old yet? They feel like they're a band.
Maybe. I think
Maybe.
it came out sometime last year.
Yeah, it came out sometime last year, but was it the first half or was it the second half? Creep it. Why am I searching Creeping Death? I'm searching Frozen Soul. I have the year. I know the year was 2021, but everything in my head is just by year. 2021 January. Okay, so it's a little over a year old. So it's always weird to include a band like that on a list where you're like, this is an essential list, an album that came out 8 months ago.
I mean, if we're putting Frozen Soul on here, we have to put Undeath and Sangui Sugabog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are two that are evidently going to come up. I feel like Sango Cinnabog is like slightly outside in that they're a band that like the old school death metal does it. The kind of like, even though like a lot of these people making it, present company included, might be kind of silly. I feel like kind of the overt silliness of oh, did I move this on accident? Oh geez. The overt silliness of the band is kind of like it's like a bit more in like the Cannibal Corpse world, that kind of continuation, whereas we're not necessarily really having that kind of sound in here where it has a bit more of the like a bit more gore and a bit more kind of brutally death metal influences, and it feels
I
like it
I
doesn't quite fit.
personally
What do you
I
think?
personally think Sangui Sugabog still counts, mostly because Devin isn't like he's not doing slam vocals,
Yeah.
and the way that Cody drums isn't like they're not slamming, and he's not doing like the constant, you know, uh, cephalotripsy blasting or whatever. So I think it's like they obviously have a lot of influence from kind of like slammy NYDM kind of bands, but I would still put the Bog as
The Bog. Yeah.
some kind of old school death metal.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Definitely. Definitely. I feel like again, it's one of those bands that that is just popping, and then like I said, in a couple of years we'll be doing this all over again, and they will be a for sure inclusion. But right now, it feels a little bit like this is a
A little
band where we're
early.
like, what are we saying? A little early, what are how they're. I feel like
Hey,
I feel like
if they can get huge off of 4 songs and 20 t-shirt designs, more power to them.
yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I'm not one that's going to complain about it. As a man, as a man that loves a merch party, I am a man. I am nothing but a man that loves a merch party. I feel like they're a very valid band to talk about, certainly in this thing. But I feel like they're a bit of a The Rest band where, you know, you mention them, someone's like, hey, I heard this. You know, they're the kind of they're almost the band that's like the reason we're making this list, where someone that like just got into Sango Cinnabog is like, what is hey, this is really cool, this new thing. What should I like this. What should I kind of be what should I be kind of listening to that's like this? You know, we're making this list for people that Sango Cinnabog's the first old school death metal band they found.
Mm-hmm.
Are Celestial Sanctuary too new? Yeah, that's another band that I feel like is in that class where you're getting a little waiting to see the impact. I mean, I love them. I got lots of.
I actually have not heard of that band before.
You haven't heard Celestial
what
Sanctuary?
What do they put out? When?
2019. 2019? 2019 question mark. 2019 is when they were formed. Yeah, 2019. They're from the UK. Album last year on Redefining Darkness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, 2019 formed. So they're hot off the presses. And yeah, the album just came out last year. I really liked it. I think I featured it in Metal Monthly. I've got a bunch of. I got some Celestial Sanctuary is a band that really likes the Real Tree camo with neon orange over it. Got a couple things like that, and yeah, album came out March 26, 2021. So yeah, barely a year old. Celestial Sanctuary.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Lord of Direction, Celestial Sanctuary split with Parallax Occlusion, Thorn, and Fume soon. Yeah, that's coming down the pipeline. I don't know if you've heard Parallax Occlusion. They're a Toronto band the Toronto death metal band that is like themed around like computer graphics. That's right.
Oh yeah. I think Dave from Nucleus was talking about that band.
Pretty it's quality. It's like, it sounds kind of like it's gonna be a gimmick, but then the music's good, and they nail the gimmick in like such a great way. You know, it's like they say rasterized death metal. They've got a shirt with like a 3080 on the back, but like a 3080 drawn, like, you know, death metal-y. It's great. It's great. Yeah, it's very fun. Very fun concept.
What if you got in your rig at home? 3080?
Yeah, I got a 3080. Yeah. What about you?
I only got a 3060.
Oh, you only got a 3060? Damn.
Yeah.
Number one pick. I mean, I kind of accidentally lucked out when the 3080 released. I was like, you know what? I can write it off. It's for work. I Twitch stream. It'll make my streams better. It's a work expense. I'll buy a 3080. And so I bought a 3080 at like launch. I just put down like a deposit at a place, and they called me in like a month. So I got it in like October of that year, and I was like, I paid MSRP for a 3080, and I was like, ooh, $1,000 for a graphics card, Canadian. That's a lot of money, but you know, like I said,
and then like
expense.
a few months later,
I was like, oh, holy fuck, am I glad I bought a graphics card? Damn. Yeah. So. So yeah, the 3080. It was funny though. If you want to laugh at my pain a little bit, the main reason I bought it was I was very excited for Cyberpunk.
That's actually like, literally the same reason I bought my 3060.
Yeah, we're like gonna experience this with all the glory it needs, and then you experience it. You're like, I wish I was using a worse graphics card, so I could have blamed that for this sucking.
It was still fun.
It was fun.
It was still fun.
There was definitely fun.
I think if you didn't look at any of the marketing before you went in, because like I basically didn't look at any of the marketing.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have like kind of like the expectations everyone else had. So
yeah.
I probably had a bit more fun. Yeah.
You're talking to a guy with like every Witcher game, like PC box set with like Geralt busts and dice in them. So I was like, and then it came out, and I was like, but we're getting very sidetracked. I mean, it's getting close to the end of the stream. I mean, I'm here with you. I appreciate you coming on. So we do need to cap things off at some point.
There's one more record that we got to shout out here. That's Trench Rot, Necronomic Warfare. Yes.
Trench Rot.
I think that is 100% the best bolt thrower album that has come out in the last 20 years, and that includes Those Once Loyal.
Ooh, I have not heard this.
Seriously?
I've not heard
it,
this.
It has the lead guitarist and the vocalist from Crypt Sermon. This was their
Oh,
old
okay.
band.
Yeah.
And then I actually had the drummer
Weird.
play on Luan.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, that's weird. Crypt Sermon is definitely not the band you expect to be the follow-up band to the best bolt thrower record released in the past 20 years. I mean, I like Crypt Sermon. I'm not throwing any shade at Crypt Sermon's way. I got that album. I jammed that album. But different music. Different music. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, this is, but like I always say, this is what I love about this. Every time I bring on someone that's, you know, just legitimately a great fountain of knowledge, as well as producer of the music we're talking about. And I always get a new band to get excited about. I got a little bookmark folder.
I think probably the worst thing about listening to Trench Rot is you realize that they're broken up and there's not going to be any new music.
Yeah, the worst thing is you're like, I mean, I can't complain because I do like Crypt Sermon, but god damn it, I would like it better if this was still a band more. Trench Rot, good. Okay, we'll toss. I mean, I haven't even heard of Trench Rot, so I feel like it's probably a little obscure to be tossing in, but we'll absolutely include the album cover. So, but we do have Trench Rot as a nice shout out. I mean, I'm gonna go home and listen to it and probably buy myself a copy. Damn, this is one of those bands. This is, you know, something's obscure when I go to get the album cover from YouTube and it's like, or from Google, and all I'm getting is like YouTube thumbnails for it. It's like easier to get on YouTube than anywhere else. So Trench Rot, great mention. Chat. How are we feeling? How are we feeling about the list? We are gonna have to do a bit of trimming. We are gonna have to do a bit of trimming to get this to where it needs to be. But what are we thinking? Is there any big misses? Are we feeling good, or did we make a whoopsie anywhere? Anything you want to complain about? You want to get riled up? This is your last chance.
Artificial Brain, maybe?
Artificial Brain. The chat.
Or are they like too techie? Maybe too techie.
Yeah. The chat really seems to say we need Frenolith. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that Frenolith's getting as. I mean, I like that band. It was definitely a band I considered, and then in my head I went, Frenolith, probably not big enough, but yeah, we're getting a lot of Frenoliths in chat.
I mean, the first album was really good, but they kind of like changed direction on the second, and I was like,
yeah.
I'm not really feeling it.
I mean, I like both records. In the chat, Mortiferum. Mortiferum is, I had them. They're in the here. We'll show you. I just so you know, I did have Mortiferum down here to talk about. I mean, we are running out of time. Mortiferum is one of those bands where it's like, they absolutely sound like this, but they are for sure a Death Doom band. Okay, so let's. I mean, oh boy, because we technically, the way we're supposed to do this, Proto and the rest can have as many albums as we want. Legend should ideally be 1, maybe 2, and then Essential Modern we should have. I think we're at 3, 7. Yeah.
I would probably take out Rippy Kolu because I assumed we were also going to be talking about, like, you know, Mortiferum or Spectral Voice. Yeah. Or those kinds of Death Doom
Rubicolo
bands.
is in the Proto. They can live in the Proto. That's totally fine. The Proto doesn't need to be trimmed down. But we do currently have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. 11 is, if we can pick one Legend and have the rest in Essential Modern, that's potentially okay. That doesn't really break the rules. Good point on Death Doom with Mortiferum. Yeah, so, I mean, you know, Spectral Voice is another one of those things where it's like, definitely feels like this, but definitely feels like we've crossed over into a new genre. Yeah, if Death Doom ain't included, drop Mortiferum and add Cerebral Rot. Drop Mortiferum. We haven't put Mortiferum in to put Cerebral Rot in there. And as we've said, Cerebral Rot, great band. They're just a little too new, I think. still. Did Blaine mention Hooded Menace? I feel like Hooded Menace is something you could talk about a little bit in the proto, because I do feel like probably a lot of these bands
I think
are influenced by
Hooded Menace.
laughs.
I mean, they're really melodic. They're
Yeah.
very. They're coming at death metal from like a totally different approach than like Asphyx.
Yeah.
So I feel like they wouldn't really be appropriate for this list.
Yeah, I feel like they wouldn't be appropriate for this. I could say Never Cross the Dead could be a proto because it was an early album and it is way more aggressive. It's the most probably aggressive of all the Hooded Menace, and you're definitely getting the most death metal. But yeah, again, that's a Death Doom. I am restraining myself. I am gonna toss in just a quick shout out to Outre-Tombe from Quebec. A great old school death metal band, and a nice way to break up a list like this because they sing in French, and death metal is like you get a lot of English. And if it's not English, you probably just can't understand it, and maybe it's English and maybe it's not. But they are very clearly, very strongly singing in French, and it adds a nice flavor, and there's a certain, and it's Quebec French too, so it's got a twang to it that adds to the sludgy griminess. Who are the two albums in the middle of the legend? Oh yeah, you can't quite, you're getting a little cut off, but if I scroll down, you can see that's Entombed and Obituary. Getting in there. So yeah, I mean, is there? Who do we think out of the four up there? If you had to pick, oh here, we'll put it to chat. We'll put it to the chat. For me, I feel like Tribulation is a bit of a weird outlier on the list because I feel like while that album certainly fits, a little bit of me feels like their impact was more in. The impact itself was more in the kind of other two phases of Tribulation. But here, let's.
I feel like once that first Tribulation album came out, then like labels just started signing chainsaw bands like crazy. So if anything, I would drop To Mold down to Essential Modern just because I mean, obviously they're the newest out of all those bands, and maybe I have a hard time saying like they directly influenced bands rather than just like being super popular.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make this fair. We're gonna make this fair. I'm gonna toss out. The two albums in the middle of in the middle of Legend, not Proto. Yeah, that's Tribulation, and that's Untergang. Yeah, sorry, I misread. So we'll put it to the chat. You know, we're having a hard time. Let's see how the chat's feeling. Dead Congregation, Tribulation, Untergang, and To Mold. Who should be the legend in this category? Make your voice heard. But hey, so thanks for coming out. You've got a bunch of projects, and you can't tell us about anything that's happening. It seems like, which is we're doing some great promo for your stuff.
I mean, yeah, I think I can say the Relapse album will be here before the end of the year.
Amazing.
I'm pretty sure I can say that, but more than that, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. Well, hey, it's still something. We're still excited to hear it. We're still going. Let's get people following your Bandcamp to catch that. We've got a new album coming out before the end of the year. Make sure you're following Rip to Shreds on Bandcamp. Grab a record, grab a shirt. Hey, Der Beerkaiser, great stream as always. Thanks so much for the support. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming out. We've been having a great time with you. And yeah, anything else you want to plug? Any other projects? I don't know if you can talk about anything else.
Check out Nameless Grave Records. That's the label I run with my friend Brandon. We've got a whole bunch of really cool shit coming up soon. We're reissuing the second Intestine Balism record on vinyl. We've got some new records from really cool bands. Can't talk about yet, but we have some cool shit coming up.
and we're just going to namelessgraverecords.bandcamp.com.
Yep.
Cool. And yeah, let me toss a link in the chat for people. Make sure you're following Nameless Grave records as well. All right, we have our poll decided. Dead Congregation just beating out Tomb Mold, nipping at their heels. And then Undergang and Tribulation. Tribulation only getting 1 vote. So bump. So we've now got 3, 6, 9. We've got 10. We've got 10 records. We've got 10 records. We're getting a little bit cut off here.
I think the obvious outlier there is mine. It doesn't need to be in there.
The obvious outlier is not yours in any way. I think that's a ridiculous comment. I think the chat would agree. That chat, tell him off. Tell him he's wrong.
Chat's pretty quiet.
Chat's pretty quiet. Look, they've been with us. The guest always gets 1 freebie. Yeah, the guest always gets 1 freebie. But the guest is also always in there. Nah, he's right. Fuck you. It doesn't belong. Fuck you. Tough shit. Ripped to shreds. Stays, Andrew. There you go. Thrash till death. I mean, hey, regardless, before I ever conversed with you, Ripped to Shreds was an album that I was really hyped on. As hyped as any of these. If not, maybe, I mean, in all seriousness, I think Witch Vomit and Ripped to Shreds out of all of these are the 2 that I probably have the most plays on, I would say, for me. I like to well, I mean, if we're not getting north or south, if we're doing the Legends and Essential Modern, yep, that record is fire. Hell yeah. Ji Goju Toku. Yeah. The riff on the title track of that Witch Vomit is perfect. Yeah, agreed. But yeah, so I mean, I think we feel good about our list. I think we've covered a lot of the big hits. We've got a couple of curveballs in there. The chat helped us pick the Legend. How you feeling? You feel good? How'd you?
I think if we're putting one Legend, I think Graves of the Archangels is the right one. Yeah. For sure.
It feels like, I mean, again, it simultaneously both a big album and kind of the one that kicked it off, and makes sense to me. And hey, chat, thanks for being here. This was definitely a more specific episode. You're always curious how much action we're gonna get, and how well it's gonna go. But this went great for one of our more specific episodes. I think I could tell you next week we're gonna do something a little less specific. Megadeth's got a new album coming out in July, so I think we're gonna do Lockhorns on Megadeth albums. Me and DK in here arguing about. There's certainly some highs and there's certainly some lows in the Megadeth discography. So that one I think is gonna be a lot of fun. And they're a band that's big enough that we can absolutely say whatever the hell we want and never have to really worry about Dave Mustaine finding out and yelling at us. Some of these times where
is Risk going to be off limits?
Is what?
Is Risk going to be off limits?
I think there's no limiter. I think we're going full ham. It's gonna be a sloppy time. Yeah, we've got some mustard stains in the chat. Mustaine will just block you on Twitter. It's fine. Exactly. There's a couple ones Mustaine's just gonna block me on Twitter. You kind of want like Who's the holy trinity of getting blocked on Twitter? Mustaine,
Chris Barnes.
Chris Barnes,
obviously.
Chris Barnes. The Chris Barnes, the legend. Chris Barnes for legend of getting blocked on Twitter. Honestly,
it's kind of hard to think beyond that.
Fuck. Why am I spacing on his name? Rob Flynn. Yeah. Trapped doesn't count. You need to have at least put out a relevant record at some point for the part of the game to be fun. John Joseph from Chromags.
Varg,
yeah. Yeah, 1 point for every time you get blocked by each Varg Twitter account that he has to keep creating. I can't believe I don't know how that guy's still on Twitter. You figure they
I
wouldn't
have
keep doing it.
no idea.
My friend made a joke about killing a local politician, and it was very clearly a joke. He's a comedian. He got IP banned from Twitter. like can't create any new accounts. His account is gone. Can't log into Twitter in any way. So just fucking scorched the earth. And I think they wouldn't give him back his old account. I think he was off for like a year, and they finally allowed him to create a new account. And he's like, "Can everyone please follow me again? I made a joke about Rob Ford, and I got banned from." Yeah. So hey, we got a local plug, Boots and Cats, Unspeakable Acts Records. For anyone who likes Arch Agathis and old school death metal, what's the plug? Unspeakable Acts Records. What are we looking at? Regurgitated Guts with.
Yeah, that's Dan from Arch Agathis, and I think maybe Joe. I'm not sure if Joe's in it, but yeah, they're totally sick. I think they just went on tour with Outer Tomb a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah. Oh, did I? I don't know. Who did I? Who? What was the? I saw Ultra Tomb a couple of weeks ago, and they had one of the I hadn't heard, but one of the band members has another band that also is Sedimentum. Sedimentum was the opening. Which is just one of the other guys' bands, which is also very great. If you're not banned from Twitter, you're doing it wrong, Baldylocks. Yeah, they did a Western Canadian tour. I guess, yeah, they probably did the West with them, and then who played with? I think it was them. Yeah, Sedimentum, Gut Void was there, and a couple others. Yeah, Damn Sedimentum Rules. Yeah, it was really great. That was my first That was my first concert since the start of COVID, and boy, what a fun one to come back with. There was a couple where it was like there was like a big act playing in Toronto, and I was like, I kind of want my first act back. I kind of want to be standing on a couch to watch my first act back. And then there's this place called Seascape, which is, to bring it back to cyberpunk, is like a cyberpunk, like cybergoth gaming nerd bar. They have like Magic the Gathering tournaments, but then they also do like death metal and hardcore shows upstairs. And like but it's still very much that club. And like the bartender is like in like a full latex goth nurse outfit. Like it's like really that kind of club. Great first show back from COVID. So I felt pretty good about that. But now I'm just rambling about. I'm getting excited about things. Always love to talk about. We got crop top blame out of it too. Yeah, I bought a shirt that was too big for them. I turned it into a crop top. Bringing it back. Bringing big Euronymous energy. Gonna get stabbed. Gonna get stabbed by Varg. So I think we've come to the end of the stream. I think we've got a great list that we're happy with. I think we're proud of this list. I think we did good work here today, and we've plugged your stuff. Anything else? Any last thing you want to say to the chat? When will Rip to Shreds logo sweatpants be back in stock? Great question.
Soon. I don't know. Maybe. I have to talk to Carl from the guy who made them. Maybe. But come to fucking Seattle in July for Northwest Terror Fest.
Northwest
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Seattle, July is going to be a lot of fun for sure. Well, I think we're going to phase things out. We're going to give a raid. We've gotten a couple of great raids from our buddy, and we're going to be probably doing something with him soon. So let's head over to Nick Nocturnal's channel. I believe he's doing some music. What is he doing? He's on, I don't know, he's on a message board. Nick Nocturnal's hilarious. We'll have a great time with him. Everybody get in the raid bus. We'll head on over there, and just a big thanks to Andrew for coming out again. I've really another one I got to check off the list of a guy I just wanted to hang out with, so I turned it into a work excursion. You know, we've had a really great.
I mean, how far is it down to Seattle from where you are?
Kind of far. It's like actually kind of a massive pain in the ass. I think the flight is like. It's realistically, I think, it's almost as bad as going to the UK. It's a 5.5 hour flight nonstop. Undrivable for sure. Undrivable. It's literally the other side of the continent. I'm in Toronto. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, that's hell far.
Unfortunately, yeah. But hopefully, I mean, we gotta get ripped to shreds in Toronto sometime soon.
Maybe like I mean, that's like near New York, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Nearish. Well, we got to do what East Coast sometime.
Yeah. New York.
Soon.
Hey,
I
if
just
you can
don't-
get to New York, I can probably get there. Buffalo, especially Buffalo, is a real. Hey, that's a drive. That's a drive your boy can do. But hey, the raid's about to kick off. So thanks so much to everybody for coming out. We'll see you next time. Have a good one. Party on. Boom.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah, of course, man. Thanks for doing it.